Good afternoon and welcome everyone to the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services for the 83rd Legislative Session. Madam Secretary, please proceed to call the roll.
Senator Lang? Senator Stone? Senator Taylor? Senator Titus? Chair Doñate.
And I'm here and all members are present. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today. It's a pretty eventful day. We have a pretty full agenda. Today we do have 4 bill hearings on a few bills. I'm going to go through the order just a second. We have a committee bill introduction and we have the work session. So I'll go over the order in just a little bit. For those who are wishing to testify today, you can go ahead and sign in at the table by the door and provide a business card to the committee secretary. If you do not wish to testify, you may still want to sign in so that there's a record of who is interested in a particular bill, and in the event the committee needs to contact you later. When testifying, please turn on your microphones on to speak and off to listen, and we have listeners here and in Las Vegas and viewers online. We ask that all public comments be kept to 2 minutes so that everyone interested in speaking can be accommodated and we can get through the agenda in a timely fashion, and speakers are urged to avoid repetition. And finally, we ask for folks to please turn off their electronic devices, especially your cell phones, or to put them on silent mode. So now that we've gone through that, we'll go through the order of today. I am going to do the committee bill introduction first, followed by the work session, and then we'll move on at that point to the bill hearings. The order of the agenda that I have is first we will do AB 368 by Assemblyman Carter, followed by AB 350. That's our cemetery bill. AB 360 will be after that by Assemblymember Golding, and then lastly AB 461 by Assemblymember Ornlicker. So folks have to step out. Again, you have the order now in case if there's anything you need to do. And all of these bills have the same rules and regulations in terms of 15, 15, 15. So 15 support, 15 in opposition, and 15 in neutral. It's the same thing that we've done throughout the session. And so let's start with the first agenda item, which is a possible bill introduction. So we have received a bill introduction. It's fairly long. I'm not going to try my best to read all of it, but this bill revises provisions relating to healthcare. It is BDR 40-1037. It's an act relating to healthcare, establishing a competitive funding program to address shortages of providers of healthcare in the state, prescribe certain requirements to expedite the credentialing and privileging of providers of healthcare, authorizing paramedics to serve as employees or volunteers in hospitals under certain circumstances. It transfers the responsibility for administering the graduate medical education grant program to the Department of Health and Human Services, makes certain other revisions relating to that program. It imposes certain requirements governing prior auth for medical or dental care, requires the department to explore ways to use federal financial participation in Medicaid to support graduate medical education, makes revisions relating to applying for and determining eligibility for Medicaid, creates and prescribes the duties of the Office of Mental Health in the department, prohibits certain non-competition covenants governing providers of healthcare with certain exceptions, requires a prioritization of certain applications for licensure as a physician, and requires certain reports of the Board of Medical Examiners and the State Board of Osteopathic Medicine. There are plenty of more provisions, but this is, as you may have known, the governor's bill on healthcare, and so I am looking for a motion to introduce the bill. We have a motion from Senator Titus and a second from our vice chair, or from Senator Lang. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposition? And the bill, the motion has been approved. Let's move on to our work session now as the next agenda item. Give me 1 second. We'll start with Assembly Bill 60 on our work session document for today. Let's go to Ms. Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. Destiny Cooper for the record. Assembly Bill 60, Reprint 1, revises provisions relating to certain behavioral health services. It's sponsored by the Assembly Committee on Health and Human Services on behalf of the Northern Regional Behavioral Health Policy Board. It was heard in committee on April 29th. In summary, Assembly Bill 60 requires the certification of prevention specialists who address substance use and other behavioral disorders by the Nevada Certification Board or its successor organization. If the board or its successor organization cease to provide such certification, it may be provided by the Division of Public and Behavioral Health. Additionally, AB 60 requires substance use order prevention coalitions to employ or enter into contracts with certified prevention specialists as necessary to perform the coalition's duties. Finally, the bill requires peer recovery support specialists, peer recovery support specialist supervisors, and peer recovery support specialist interns to be at least 18 years of age. Senator Doniate proposed a brief amendment, which revises the effective date to January 1, 2026 for sections 1, 2, 4 to 7 inclusive and 13 to 25 inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cooper. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, this is a motion to amend and do pass. We have a motion from our vice chair. Do we have and we have a second from Senator Stone. Any discussion on this bill? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion's carried, and I will go ahead and assign that floor statement to Senator Titus. Let's move on to Assembly Bill 244. Ms. Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. Assembly Bill 244, reprint 1, enacts prohibitions relating to the use of disposable foodware containers containing polystyrene foam by certain food dispensing establishments. It's sponsored by Assemblymember Considine and was heard in committee on May 1st. Assembly Bill 244 prohibits a food dispensing establishment with 10 or more locations doing business in the state from selling, preparing, providing, or transporting food or beverages using a disposable foodware container that is made wholly or partially from polystyrene foam. A violation is subject to a civil penalty not to exceed $100 per day. Beginning January 1, 2029, all food dispensing establishments will be prohibited from using disposable foodware containers that are made wholly or partially from polystyrene foam. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cooper. This is a motion of do pass. Do I have a motion? We have a motion from our vice chair, seconded from Senator Lang. Any discussion on this bill? We'll move to the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any nays? We have a nay from Senator Titus, and the motion carries, and I will go ahead and assign that floor statement to myself. That concludes our work session for today, and now we will go ahead and move on to the bills. Give me 1 second. Let's begin with Assembly Bill 368, and so at this time I'll go ahead and invite Assemblymember Max Carter, and you may begin when you are ready, sir.
Good afternoon, Chair Doniate, Vice Chair Taylor, and members of the Senate HHS Committee. I'm Max Carter. I represent Assembly District 12 in the east side of Las Vegas and the north side of Henderson. Today I'm bringing before you Assembly Bill 368 that looks to expand upon the good work we did with, I believe it was AB 202 last session, about cameras in skilled nursing facilities. Skilled nursing facilities are narrowly defined in Nevada statute, and it left out a huge demographic that we were looking for. With me today, that I'm going to let do most of the speaking, is a constituent of mine, Peggy Stevenson, and her husband, Michael Stevenson, who honestly, when you hear their story, they've been through hell. Down south, I also have Jody Collins, and her son, Andre Collins, who it happens to be Andre's birthday. Andre lives in Betty's Village in a, what is it? I'm trying to put the words together. Supported living arrangement, or it's because it's not a facility. And with that, with your permission, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Stevenson to tell you why this is so important.
Thanks. My name is Peggy Stevenson, P-E-G-G-Y-S-T-E-P-H-E-N-S-O-N. For the record, I guess I'm supposed to say. Just a brief background. In the United States, there's about 1.2 million licensed units, which means beds for people that have that need assisted living. That's about 31,000 communities nationwide. In Nevada, there's approximately 41% of not Nevada, I'm sorry, in the West, there's 41% of the beds are in the western part of the United States. 56% of these are owned by chains. There's a handful of states that have some semblance of a camera law. They're all different, and there's no real standard. Our goal, after we've gone through everything that we've gone through, is now to make Nevada a model state to help our vulnerable population. So hopefully our leaders in Washington can mandate some sort of national reform, because Houston, we have a big problem here with health care. I'm here because my mother and father were good role models. They'd be here if they could. When we left Mom to do this, I held her hands and I told her that she was going to help a lot of people, and she gave me a big smile on her face. So AB 202 was a start, but it was narrowly written, as Max said, for skilled nursing only, and skilled nursing doesn't have the corner of the market for abuse and neglect of loved ones who need extra care. This past Veterans Day, I went to the Boulder City VA home where Governor Lombardo was speaking and honoring all of our veterans who served. And it was there that I told him about the long, hard road that we've traveled and that AB 02 needed to be expanded, and he listened. And he told me to get together with my legislator and he would sign this. So that's what I did, and thank you, Max. And Max is our assemblyman. And thank you, all of you, for your service and listening and hopefully supporting this. My mom's a survivor of many things, and now it's really only the lines on her face that can tell the story of her life in the past 6 years. But my husband and I are here to tell you more. My mom was born in Munich, Germany in 1930, and she was a child under Hitler. And 70 years ago, this is my mom and dad. They were a love story when they met during the Korean War when Dad was stationed in Munich. And they got married and moved to New York State, where my dad was from. My mom was naturalized in 1969. They were both good people who lived by the golden rule. Dad worked and retired from Revere Copper and Brass. He was a superintendent of shipping. He loved and supported all sorts of sports and even coached our current commissioner of baseball in the Mesa Leagues in Rome, New York. And my mom retired from the Rome State School, and in its day it was an institution for mentally handicapped individuals. She was a nurse's assistant and manager, and my mother pioneered the concept of group homes for higher functioning people so they could enjoy more of a family atmosphere. And many weekends she would bring someone home to spend the day with us, and I have fond memories of those times. They retired here in Vegas in 91, and my dad passed in 2009. When my mom was 85, she needed open heart surgery, and it left her addled from the anesthesia. So the details of everyday living were too complicated for her after that, and it was difficult for her to articulate her thoughts, but at times it clicked, and I've been her advocate and caregiver since then. Time passed and bodies decline, and you add a little elder dementia, and I call Mom's 50% dementia. She's got great instincts, and she has appropriate responses. She knows what she's saying, and we don't always understand what she's saying, but sometimes it clicks. She loves being in the mix of life. She's filled with love for everyone and animals, and she knows who is bad. When we needed extra help, we only looked at A-rated facilities, and it's been 6 years and 6 facilities. There's no hyperbole in any of this. This is my mother's story, but she's not the only one. This is not an isolated story. In no particular order, she slept in the same soiled sheets for at least 2 days, was told to remove her wedding ring and her mother's ring before she was showered, and it was never returned. And of course, staff will blame the residents. Rooms aren't regularly cleaned or maintained. Cold food was delivered in boxes to a room instead of community dining, as promised for socialization. Irregular laundry service, missing clothing. Meds left in a cup for her to take on her own, which she needed help with. Knees and legs with broken skin. No wound care or explanation. She had bad bruising on her wrists and forearms. Torn skin. UTIs from having soiled pants on too long. Passing out in the shower multiple times. Reports of mom's aggression towards staff, which leads to over-medicating for anxiety or sedation. And you don't know what the truth is until you find out what the real truth is, and that's where our 36-hour days begin as advocates. So we lobbied for 4 months for cameras with a facility and an ombudsman and hospice. They didn't have a policy, but no was the answer. And they finally relented. One of them finally relented. And we put one in her studio and one in her bathroom. And camera signs were posted. And that's where we began to see the real truth. Mom would be dragged by forearms quickly across the room at the employee's pace, not being respectful of her then 92-year-old pace. That's where the bruising and the tears were from on her forearms. In the shower, she was ushered onto a cold fiberglass seat. And then the water was turned on and adjusted, maybe. I couldn't tell from the camera whether it was actually adjusted. And we all know it's cold to start out. That's why she screamed and fought. We hired a psychologist to come in, and she explained to us that it was fight or flight. And that's why she kept passing out or fought. Mom had a stuffed dog that was her baby. And one day she was in bed and she was tired, and an employee wanted her out of bed. And she yanked the dog away from my mother and said, "I'm going to put your dog in jail if you don't get up." And Mom was crying for her baby. 2 other staffers wanted Mom out of bed at a different time, and they were pulling at her arms and grabbing at her feet, and Mom was repeatedly saying, "Leave me alone." And they got a third person. A third person came in and took strawberries and cream that I had brought for her, which was one of her favorites, out of her refrigerator, and sat down on what happened to be a new sofa that we had supplied in her unit, and he was taunting her, saying, "Inga," eating her strawberries, and sticking his hands in her container and eating her strawberries and saying, "Inga, come on, get out of bed," and just taunting her. And then she didn't want to get out of bed, and he wiped his hands on the sofa, and when he was done, put everything back in the refrigerator. There's night staff that's supposed to come around and bed check every place every 2 hours, and that never happened. So no idea if everybody, there were 10 people in that unit, everybody was all right or not. We weren't allowed staff schedules to know who was helping Mom. They were internal documents, so we weren't privy to that. But they had 24-hour visitations, so we could find out for ourselves. And so that's what I did. And 24 hours a day, I was there checking on different shifts to see who was assigned to Mom. And there was staff that was not allowed to help her, and they were there anyways. We're not allowed Mom's staff log sheets, which is in facilities what are used to determine the level of care. They're maintained by the caregivers. I use the term loosely, sorry. The same people that are inconsiderate and cruel. They're the ones that make the daily log sheets, and those reports are used to determine the meds that will be recommended for her. So the caregivers prefer sedated residents. It's less work for them. I've recorded abandonment of a 10-person unit for greater than 25 minutes. I was retaliated against for sharing evidence to the management. I had to remove cameras. There was a new policy they created. There was no cameras because it was a violation of a dressing room law. They required, they said that mom needed total lockdown, and it was going to be $2,600 more a month. The facility policy was to report to them so that they could fix the problem. This is a picture of my mother on her 93rd birthday. The day before that, we had gone to Chico's, and she picked out her outfit, and she was really excited and happy and mobile. 2 weeks after that, she was abandoned in a common area. The 2 caregivers that were supposed to be there weren't accounted for. She fell down, broke her hip, and that changed the course of the end of her life. I want you to remember that this bill only potentially helps people with active advocates, and it's only a snapshot in time in rooms. You have no idea what's going on elsewhere in the common areas. We can watch our dogs live stream all day in doggy daycare and know that, they're comfortable and happy, and that makes us feel good. And you can watch your kids in school all day and have some comfort in that too, but we can't watch our loved ones who depend on us. And we have to live with the guilt of subjecting them to this kind of care. And I am told that the service providers who sell and promise levels of care assistance are a hard no on cameras in bathrooms where abuse, theft, and injury occur under the cloak of invasion of privacy. This is a misconception. There is no privacy in assisted living. 24 hours a day, strangers have access to your room. Strangers are helping you toilet. Strangers are helping you shower. There is no privacy. That's separate from HIPAA. HIPAA has nothing to do with this. Cameras are witnesses and help both sides of the story. It's not just a one-sided need. Also, I'm told that it's a hard no with informational onboarding documents stating camera laws and reporting guidelines for violations. I can't understand that. AB 202 had very little publicity, and people in their time of need are usually exhausted or frustrated or any number of emotions, but they're looking for help. And when you go looking and you go to an A-rated facility, they have shiny glossy brochures that are filled with all sorts of promises, and they don't deliver, but they're somehow in control of our loved ones' care and don't really have to follow through on all their promises. That's what we've discovered. There are several other issues with 368 as it is now, and sadly, there's more work that's left to be done, but I guess we have to start somewhere, and I hope that you'll help now and pass this along so we can continue trying to make things better. That's it for me.
And thank you so much for sharing your story. And we're so sorry for your loss, but of course for your advocacy, we greatly appreciate it. Assemblyman, given that we've already reached the 15-minute mark, do you want to go specifically to the provisions of the bill just because of the time that we have today?
Senator Dunyadi, I would ask the indulgence. As you can see, we've got a mother and her son that are there, and if you'd give Mrs. Collins a chance to speak briefly, that would be fantastic.
Assemblyman, unfortunately, we do have plenty of bills today, and they can speak during the testimony, but just because of the presentation, I want to make sure that the committee members have plenty of times to ask questions.
Okay, basically, thank you very much, as Max Carter. For the record, to provide context, existing laws allow a patient in a skilled nursing facility or their representative to request the installation of an electronic communication device in their living quarters. If approved, the patient is responsible for choosing the device and paying the associated costs. This bill proposes to expand that to more than just skilled nursing facilities and instead use the term facility for assisted living. Section 3 through 6 define the healthcare facilities included in this bill. Most importantly, it defines facility for assisted living, which will be used throughout the bill. Sections 8 through 14 broaden the applicability of existing law to apply to assisted living facilities instead of only skilled nursing facilities for the purpose of installing electronic communication devices. It is important to note that skilled nursing facilities are still included under this new definition. Additionally, in the Assembly, we amended the bill to allow residents in living communities for people with disabilities to install such devices, which can be found in Section 24 through 31. An additional amendment provides a provider of supported living arrangement services in the home from entering into a contract that prohibits the use of an electronic communication device in the home. So, in a nutshell, what has been added is assisted living facilities, and when we talk about supported living arrangements, we're specifically, for those of us from down south, we're talking about Betty's Village, which is the independent living facilities associated but not part of Opportunity Village. And that's our presentation, and ready for questions.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Before we go to questions, can you walk us through the amendment again one more time, just to make sure that we know the differences of what you're adding? Just to double check.
Max Carter for the record, and I apologize for that. The amendment that came through in the Assembly was adding in the supported living arrangements. We had to take and bring another amendment during the process to further refine the definitions of the facilities. We worked with both the trade group for assisted living facilities and the director of ADSD. And then the final amendment was to take and make sure that we codified the proper facilities, and we tried to make sure we didn't capture arrangements where somebody is doing a supported living arrangement in a residential facility, where you've got like a person that lives there that's got one or two people that are living with them under contract. That was what the part about being able to enter into a contract, excluding that for those individual residential facilities.
Thank you so much. Let's go for questions. Vice Chair Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Assembly Member. And really, certainly thank you to the Stevensons and the other family for being willing to share your story to help somebody else. That's how your mom's memory will live on and helping other people. Just a couple of questions, Assembly Member. I just want to make sure you mentioned a couple of things. I want to make sure that I have it. So this is it's skilled nursing facilities now, and you're expanding the definition to supportive, right? To supportive facilities, right? Did I get that right? To supportive, that's it, supportive living arrangements. Thank you. I don't know why I don't have that one in my notes. Supportive living arrangements, which will still include skilled nursing facilities and also assisted living facilities. And you said independent living facilities as well?
Max Carter for the record. A little bit twisted up there. Assisted living facilities is what we were focusing on to begin with, that the definition does now include skilled nursing facilities. We added in supportive living arrangements, which are those facilities like Betty's Village that's for independent living for the disabled community. What I talked about with the other ones is we were excluding. We did not want to sweep in those small, independent, in-home care facilities. We wanted to stay away from that for right now. And yes, we're talking about dealing with elder abuse is what we're dealing with here.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Assemblyman, I have a quick question. So I distinctly remember the conversation with former Assemblymember Summers Armstrong, who worked on this bill last time. I know that there were concerns in that bill that regarding the form that folks have to fill out for permission for their, if they had, for instance, a roommate and so forth. More so on the privacy concerns that was raised. Obviously, we'll hear HIPAA concerns as a part of this. And so I believe we ironed out the issues with that bill. And so what you're seeking to establish as part of the questioning from our vice chair is you're expanding the types of facilities for other senior residents. Are you using the same, and so I'm assuming that's correct, are you using the same requirements and forms that we established for essentially building off of the last law, only now just expanding the folks who are applied to, or maybe if there are other changes that we should be aware of, that would be great.
Thank you. Max Carter for the record. The answer is yes, we're expanding on 202 and on those. And that is the frustration that you heard with Mrs. Stevenson, was trying to take and toughen those up and require mandatory posting in the facilities. We could not make that happen this time around. And my hope is that we can see some work done in the interim on this issue.
Thank you. And by mandatory notices, are you referring to section, because I know section 29 of the bill talks about making sure that there's a conspicuous notice in terms of the rights that folks have for this type of service. And so that's not where you're referring to.
Thank you, Chairman Dunyade. No, it's not. We did want, what we were looking for was mandatory communication with residents, new residents, about this is what's expected. We were looking for more detailed and more strict notifications in those posters that were required, but we're not changing that at this time.
Great. Thank you, sir. Any other questions? Senator Titus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, thank you for sharing your story. Those are hard ones to hear, having been medical director for long-term care for 30 years, and I'm pretty appalled by your story. So having said that, back to the bill itself, Assemblyman Carter, looking at, you're changing the definition. So in section 3, actually, your faculty for a facility for assisted living now means all of the below, the intermediate care, the skilled nursing, individual residential, and then unit for provision long-term care, residential facility for groups, and a dramatic expansion of the definition. Is that limited to just this bill, or will we, and I think maybe I need legal to know, will it change? Are there other chapters out there of NRS that by changing that definition, it will affect those too? Or would that just be limited to this bill regarding cameras?
LCB legal for the record. No, the definition here in section 7, it incorporates that definition that you're talking about, and that just applies to the provision about cameras. That doesn't have anything to do with anything else.
With the rest of NRS.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we're not having some global changes by changing the definition of what an assisted living facility is. So it would just affect where you could use a camera.
Eric Robbins, LCB Legal, that is correct. And actually, to clarify further, the suggested amendment is part of that is to provide additional clarification so that it gets rid of the term facility for assisted living and just states the type of facilities that this applies for, just to avoid confusion like what you're talking about.
Right, thank you. So the amendment would fix that. Thank you. And that's really was my only question. Thank you.
And thank you for that, Senator Titus. And yes, that was quite a lengthy process with differing people joining in, LCB disagreeing with the trade organization, disagreeing with the ADSD part of Department of Health. And so it's been worked over a lot.
And thank you for that, because there's lots of ramifications for reimbursement, for, how they're licensed and all of those, and wanted to make sure we weren't expanding it way too broad. Thank you.
And thank you again for that, Senator Tice. That is another good point. The final piece that we had to change had to do with Medicare and Medicaid definitions to make sure that we were compliant.
Any other questions? Just one. Maybe I have the last one. Section 28 of the bill, I know it goes through the penalties associated for first offenses and so forth. Are these the same penalties that we established last session, or are you stepping them up because of non-compliance? I just wanted to, it's more of a technical question. So
It's Max Carter for the record. Chairman Dunyate, no, we did not change. There was not changes to the penalties. We're just carrying it over from the last time.
thank you, sir. Any other questions? I think you've cleared this hurdle. Let's go ahead and open it up for testimony. And so if you would like to go ahead and, so for the folks that didn't get the chance to present, you can stay at the dais. And then obviously if there's other folks in Las Vegas or in Carson City that want to step forward and present, now would be the times to do so. I'm going to, since we'll have more folks coming up right now, let's start in Las Vegas, please, if you want to begin.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman Donate and Madam Chair Taylor and all the Senate committee members. My name is Jody Collins, as Max mentioned. That's JODICOLLINS. I'm here with my son Andre, ANDRE, and my husband Robert, ROBERT. As Max mentioned, Andre turned 30 years old today. He is profoundly deaf, has cerebral palsy, and uses an electric wheelchair. I want to thank the Assembly members and senators who passed AB 202 during the last legislative session, the bill that allows cameras in skilled nursing facilities, but we are hoping to expand that, as they have said. Andre moved into his own apartment last year. He lives alone with the assistance of Medicaid waivers through Desert Regional Center. My son has lived in our home with multiple cameras since 2007, so when he moved into his own apartment, he wanted cameras as well. We were told that he could not have them because it was a rights violation or a rights restriction for Andre, that he needed to live in his own apartment without cameras. When DRC staff spoke with Andre and he told them that he wanted the cameras, he was told that it was a privacy issue because of the 24-hour caregiving. I believe that is essential for the vulnerable population, such as my son, to have cameras. People such as those with disabilities, the elderly, the nonverbal, those in memory care, and individuals like this are often unable to tell about things that are happening or express mental or physical abuse that may be going on. Without cameras, neglect and abuse can occur without accountability. I believe cameras would be an extra layer of insurance for the client or the patient and the staff who care for them. If there's any kind of accusations made on either side, the cameras can offer objective testimony. Unfortunately, I know this from experience because my son has had 2 incidences of staff falling asleep while caring for him, even though they're supposed to be awake 24 hours. If we didn't have the cameras, we wouldn't have had clear evidence of what took place that day. The 1999 landmark Supreme Court case of Olmstead v. LC established that the least restrictive community integrated setting for those with disabilities is a right. And we knew as a family that it was important to allow Andre his independence. And he was very adamant that he wanted to live alone. Andre would just like to add, he uses a communication device. Your turn.
I like living in my own apartment. I would like to have cameras. I use this device to communicate.
We thank you for listening today, and we hope that you will support AB 368 to include cameras for all vulnerable populations who may not be able to speak out or have someone to speak out for them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for your comment. Thank you for being here. Let's go to the next person in Las Vegas, please.
Thank you, Chair. Jamie Cogburn on behalf of the Nevada Justice Association. I should start, I apologize for last session. I worked with Assemblymember Summers Armstrong on this AB 202, and it was fully our intent to include all facilities. So unfortunately, we're back here trying to fix that and expand it to all assisted living facilities and any group homes where there are people that need protection. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else in Las Vegas willing to come forward? Let's go to Carson City. Please begin, sir.
Yes, my name is Mike Stevenson. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the care facilities and the operations and the frontline workers. The frontline workers consist of CNAs, or certified nursing assistants, and caregivers. I'm going to focus on the caregivers because they are the true frontline personnel who interact with our vulnerable loved ones the most. To become a caregiver in the state of Nevada requires you to do 8 hours of online training. You heard that right, 8 hours of online training, and then 8 hours annually. So you can do that with the help of your buddies or with the help of open books or anything else. There's zero hands-on training. There's zero accountability on if you completed it yourself or not. So in that 8 hours of training, you don't get to train on changing patients' underwear, helping them bathe, administer medication, do the Heimlich maneuver, do anti-choking techniques, feeding them hygiene or medications. Caregivers are normally hired at a minimum wage. There's not a requirement for a caregiver to have a high school diploma or a GED. So bottom line, they're minimally trained, minimum pay, minimally educated, and minimal supervision. The Nevada Administrative Code does not provide a CNA to caregiver staffing ratio requirements. It simply says it's sufficient to meet residents' needs, which is an open book for the facility to decide what they need to do. So this is a perfect storm for having cameras to verify what the caregivers are doing and what the CNAs are doing. It's a perfect incident to partner with these facilities to ensure that what they say that is happening are documented, and they're backing up their paper records with the verifiable video records. My father was the one that always quoted, "Trust but verify," and there's nothing more that verifies it more than 24/7 video camera feed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next caller.
Good afternoon. My name is Tia Smith, TIA-SMITH. I'm a policy attorney with ACLU of Nevada. We support this bill and we urge the committee to support as well. Thank you.
Jonathan Norman, Nevada Coalition of Legal Service Providers. Thank you, Chair. In support of the bill, if people want to have a camera in their own space and that makes them feel safe and comfortable, they should be allowed to do so. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else in Carson City or in Las Vegas, feel free to come forward. I don't see anyone else. AVH, let's go online, please.
To testify in support on AB 368, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 891, please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Caller, you may proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair Donate, Vice Chair Taylor, and committee. My name for the record is Terry Laird, CERRILAIRD. I'm the Executive Director at RPEN, the Retired Public Employees of Nevada. We have nearly 7,000 members in 17 chapters statewide and have been in existence for nearly 50 years. As many of our members are retirees who are aging, including myself, who I just turned 69 this week, elder care is something no one should take for granted, because you never know when you might find yourself in a senior care facility, whether it's assisted care or medical care that you require. The last thing anyone wants to find is themselves in a facility where abuse is present. I know my mother was forced to place my grandmother in such a facility, though she had no idea her mother would be abused. But the facility was what she could afford, and therein lies the problem. Cost should never be a factor in whether a loved one ends up in a poorly run facility and abused at the hands of a caregiver who should never be accepted, but unfortunately it happens, as you've heard today. Recent testimony when this bill was heard showed that the facility in question was not a low-cost facility, and yet their loved one suffered at the hands of caregivers at the facility in question. They suspected abuse, so they put in a camera which proved their suspicions. It is heartbreaking because they were forced to remove the camera, which was their only proof of the abuse. As previous testimony then showed, we have cameras in daycare for our children, cameras in animal shelters, but there's no such protection for our elder citizens. Every one of us should be concerned about this, and as such, RPEN supports AB 368, and we hope you will too. Thank you.
Hello, this is Denise Robinson. For the record, my son Ryan resides at the ICF at Desert Regional Center, and I am 100% in favor of this bill for assisted living and for places like the ICF. My son, we're currently in a situation where my son was abused. It was caught on camera in the common area. And I believe that incident continued in his room, but there is no camera in his room. But he suffered a gash in his head and 3 staples at UMC. Had we had a camera in the room, we could have seen that what happened out in the common areas continued within the in his bedroom. It's currently under investigation. It's been under investigation for almost 45 days, going on 60 days. The police are waiting for the identity of the person from Desert Regional Center who actually did the slapping. That's been held by Desert Regional Center. They're not giving that information to the police, and we're sitting here now in limbo. Cameras in JDTs are also something that need to be addressed. And I agree with the wonderful mom that said privacy is a non-existent thing in these facilities. It absolutely mostly is. Our people, my son cannot have a conversation and tell you what happened to him. And it's vitally important that he is taken seriously and given the protection that he needs. And I, as his guardian, are being denied over and over and over again access to the videos to see what happened, to talk about what happened. And I am being left with just leaving it all up to the people that supposedly know nothing about it. So this bill is incredibly important for so many populations, and everybody, every single one of us will have to have these services at one time in our lives. And I support it 100%, and I hope you will too.
Hello, Chair and members of this committee. My name is Catherine Nielsen. I'm the Executive Director of the Nevada Governor's Council on Developmental Disabilities. Our office has received numerous phone calls from families like Ms. Robinson reporting horrific abuse and neglect in residential care settings across Nevada. These families often have no recourse because the current law does not permit objective documentation through electronic monitoring. Cameras provide neutral, verifiable evidence that can protect both residents and staff, ensuring accountability and transparency. And our hands are often tied with inability to be able to help these families beyond advocating and educating on measures like these. So thank you so much for hearing this bill today.
There are no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you so much. Let's move on to opposition. If you would like to provide an opposition testimony, please come forward. I don't see anyone here or in Las Vegas. AVH, is there anyone online?
To testify in opposition on AB 368, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last three digits, 724, you are unmuted and you may begin.
I'm on my telephone, so I'm not sure if this is me or not. Am I okay to speak? No.
Please proceed.
Can you hear me?
Please proceed.
Okay. My name is Carol Matron. I'm sorry, I had no 724 code there. My name is Carol Matron for the record, Matrone, and I represent myself and my daughter Maria Matron, Matrone. Maria is a resident in an intensive supported living arrangement here in Las Vegas. When she moved into her apartment and in previous ISLAs, she's requested cameras. She's 34 years old and significantly physically challenged. However, she's very bright, articulate, speaks on assistive technology devices. So providing cameras under the bill 368 and approval of the cameras, because I am in support, is something that both her and I would like to weigh in on. It not only provides peace of mind for her and her caregivers and her family members, it provides accountability and credibility to the agencies, but also if there is a discrepancy, they can review those cameras and make sure what the situation was before proceeding with disciplinary actions. So I am in support of Bill 368. I might have come in on the opposition side. I apologize. I was trying desperately to log in. So thank you very much for your time and for the hard work that's been put in on this bill. And we look forward to it going out of this committee and on to the governor for approval. Thank you.
If you have recently joined the call and would like to testify in opposition on AB 368, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you so much. Let's go to neutral. Is there anyone that would like to testify in neutral on this bill? I don't see anyone here or in Las Vegas. AVH, is there anyone online?
Testify in neutral on AB 368, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you so much, AVH. Asumam, do you have any closing remarks?
Thank you, Chair Dunyade. Yes, this is Max Carter for the record. I just want to say this is one of those bills that as a legislator you hope to get. It's a constituent that brought a problem to government and it worked through to the proper place. And I hope that you guys can find a way to help us move this important piece of legislation forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for bringing this forward, and of course to your co-presenters for joining us here today. At this time, I will go ahead and close the hearing on this bill, and we will move on to our next one, which is AB 350, and I will go ahead and invite our co-presenters to come. This bill revises provisions relating to cemeteries. I will ask my committee members not to mention any deadly questions because it is deadline week. You may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair. For the record, my name is Attar Hasibullah, first name spelled A-T-H-A-R, last name Hasibullah, H-A-S-E-E-B-U-L-L-A-H. I'm the Executive Director for the American Civil Liberties Union of Nevada. This hearing will actually probably be pretty concise. We've spent a significant, and unfortunately significant amount of time working through things we didn't necessarily know existed in Nevada. Just the nexus for the bill for us. This also came from member concerns that we received surrounding adequacy-related considerations at cemeteries statewide. We won't get into too many specifics there, but the two initial points we were looking to address were with respect to the definition of orderly conditions at cemeteries to provide consistent standards, as well as addressing issues related to exhumations to ensure that the process for an exhumation occurring was a bit more organized. As it stands, this section of law is not routinely opened. So some additional considerations came in. I'm going to turn it over to my co-presenter, who's on my staff, Kayla Maese, civil rights analyst with our team, and then we'll be able to answer questions. I do know and wanted to share that we were able to work with a variety of different counties statewide, as well as NACO, as well as a multitude of cemeteries to bring this into fruition. And an additional piece that was offered that Kayla will be speaking about with respect to veteran cemeteries were brought in light of some additional considerations that were raised. So with that, again, thank you, and I'll turn it over to Kayla.
Good afternoon, Chair Donyate, Vice Chair Taylor, Kayla Maese for the record, Kaylahmaese, Civil Rights Analyst at the ACLU of Nevada. I will be walking us through the first reprint of the bill as well as the conceptual amendments. So Section 1 of the bill provides that before a cemetery authority may disinter or remove any human remains interred in all or any part of the cemetery must petition the district court in the county in which it's located for an order authorizing discernment and removal. The petition must include a concise statement as to the necessity of the proposed action and accompanied by adequate documentation to justify a hearing on the petition. Once the court sets a hearing, the petitioner shall provide notice and a copy of the petition to every person who holds or has right of internment of that plot. If any individual wishes to oppose the petition, the person must appear before court at the hearing. The court must issue an order for the discernment and removal of human remains interred in the cemetery if it is found by clear and convincing evidence that this discernment is necessary. Jumping to Section 1.5, the cemetery authority must maintain a written record for each person whose remains are disinterred and removed. Those records must include the name of the person, a description of the plot from which the remains were removed, and the locations where the remains are reinterred if they are reinterred. This documentation must be provided to a local health officer, county coroner, or the Nevada Funeral and Cemetery Services Board upon request. The provisions in this section do not apply to a certain group of people. A person to whom a permit for discernment has been issued pursuant to NRS 451.045, which is the local health officer, a county coroner in the performance of his or her official duties, or a person who is authorized to order burial or cremation of human remains pursuant to NRS 451.024, which includes individuals like next of kin or beneficiaries or executors left through testamentary documents. Sections 2 through 4 of this bill makes conforming changes relating to the issuance by the court rather than by the cemetery authority of an order of discernment and removal of human remains in the cemetery. Section 5 of this bill makes changes relating to maintenance of the cemeteries. Currently, this chapter in NRS is very vague, which is half the reason why we are here today. Cemetery owners are required to keep their cemeteries in an orderly condition, but orderly condition has no definition inside of NRS. So we are going to look at the conceptual amendment to go through Section 5. I did submit that conceptual amendment to the committee. So for the conceptual amendment, we are going to look to amend Section 5.1A to include a provision that excludes mowing and maintaining any grass in which grass growth is dormant based on temperature conditions or when city, state, county, or national water management agencies limit the irrigation water supply due to drought conditions. We're going to amend Section 5.1B to include a provision that annual weed treatment can suffice for compliance within this subsection. We're going to amend Section 5.1F to clarify that tombs, monuments, gravestones, or other structures within the limits of the cemetery is properly placed on the intended spaces as documented in sales or interment records. Amend or add Section 5.1G to allow for the temporary removal and subsequent replacement of any tombs, monuments, gravestones, or other structures to allow access of equipment, memorial installation, or other activity required for the normal operations of a cemetery. Amend Section 5.2 to include a provision that if an owner of a cemetery fails to comply with the order to any action necessary to bring that cemetery into an orderly condition as prescribed in the bill, the county or city in which the cemetery is located may take any action necessary to bring the cemetery into such condition at the owner's expense. We're going to be omitting any references in the bill to which a city or county may accept the transfer of a title of a cemetery that is not in compliance. And lastly, we are looking to add Section 6 to this bill, which allows members of the National Guard or Reserve component of the United States who do not meet the eligibility requirements outlined in NRS 417.201 Section 1, but do meet the definition of a veteran as defined in NRS 417.005 to be eligible for internment in a state veteran cemetery.
So with that, that is the bill and the conceptual amendment, and we are happy to take questions.
Thank you so much. Committee members, any questions? Senator Titus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here. Living in rural Nevada, we have a lot of old towns that have old cemeteries. And frequently there's volunteer groups that go out there and maybe fence them off so people don't ride motorcycles through them. But they are owned by the county per se. And so I'm concerned about some of the regulations will infect or mandate that then the county gets engaged in taking care of that old cemetery. And then I have a follow-up question.
Kayla, may I say for the record, thank you for the question. So with this bill, we are looking not to apply these provisions to any cemeteries that are owned by the county, by the city, or that are owned by the federal government. So those cemeteries in rural Nevada wouldn't be affected by this bill.
And also, follow up if I might, living in rural Nevada, we have not uncommonly Native American land that sometimes we might find suddenly that there's human remains there that are native graveyards. Doesn't affect anything along that line.
Kayla, may I say for the record, it does not, Senator Titus.
All right, just wanted clarification. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, I think you cleared the hurdle, so let's go ahead and move on to testimony. If you would like to provide testimony in support, please come forward. And if folks are in Las Vegas that want to testify as well, please come forward as well. We'll start here in Carson City. Please begin.
Good afternoon, Jennifer Lazovich, Lazovich, here today on behalf of Davis Funeral and Cemetery. Davis has been operating funeral homes in Las Vegas for 75 years. They have a couple of locations, 35 acres at Patrick and Eastern, and they also own and operate Bunkers Memory Garden and Bunkers Edenvale. Over that time, they've always taken pride in how their cemeteries look, and we really, really appreciate the ACLU working with us on the changes to this bill. There were a lot, and they took a lot of time to make sure that the language was right. It's a very interesting bill, and a lot of technical issues go into maintaining a cemetery that we had to work on it with. So with that, we're supporting. Thank you.
Chair and committee members, for the record, my name is Andrew LaPelbit. I'm the chairman of the United Veterans Legislative Council for all of Nevada, the 50,000 veterans in our state, and when you count their families, the 500,000 in our state, Nevadans. Anyway, we're in support of AB 350 as it is amended to include provisions for our Guard and reserves to be interned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Jason Frierson, Frierson, on behalf of Palm Mortuaries. I want to echo the sentiments expressed earlier, thanking the bill's presenters for being so open to sitting down and talking and working out some challenges, and we, with those suggested changes, are in support.
Thank you so much. Anyone else here in Carson City? Let's go to Las Vegas.
Good afternoon, Chair and Commission. Director Mary Devine, Nevada Department of Veteran Services. And thank you so much. I am also in support of AB 350. It'd be a wonderful thing for our National Guard and Reserve members. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? AVH, is there anyone online?
To testify in support on AB 350, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue.
Hello.
Please proceed.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is John Drew Lawton, spelled JOHN-DREWLAWTON. I am the owner of Sierra Memorial Garden Cemetery and Hillside Cemetery, both in Reno. I thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and I wanted to acknowledge that the proposed amendments in this bill are well drafted, language is thoughtful, use of industry-specific terms is accurate and appreciated. That said, I am in support of the bill, but I do have two concerns that I'd like to raise, both of which relate to scenarios that, while uncommon, are very real. First, the language in the portion of the bill 451-070-17A concerning petitioning the court for an order authorizing disinterment seems ambiguous and therefore creates confusion. It states that none of the provisions for the section apply to the disinterment of plots owned in fee simple. On its face, this could be interpreted to mean that remains in fee simple plots could be disinterred without judicial oversight. I do not believe that is the intent, but this is how the statute could be interpreted. So I just wanted to make that known. And for context, as the owner of Hillside Cemetery, it is a non-endowment care cemetery in downtown Reno, which most of the plots are held fee simple with no further heirs for care and maintenance. While I do have no plans for disinterment, that does not mean at some point in the future, the needs of the community, namely the health, safety, comfort, and welfare of the public, might not be best served by contemplating disinterment. Judicial review should remain an option for all owners, regardless of how the land is held. Denying access entirely could raise serious constitutional concerns, in my opinion, and I respectfully suggest that that section be clarified to ensure that the judicial process remain open to all cemetery owners. Secondly, regarding Hillside, I'd like to address the issue of the maintenance requirements.
If you can please complete your remarks.
Cemetery, as I referred above. Yes. Yep. The language appears that Hillside is a non-endowment care cemetery, which is a problem that I'd inherited and not created, but the current language appears to apply to the maintenance and financial obligations to a non-endowment care cemetery or ununiform. That simply isn't feasible in a case like that cemetery where there's no endowment care fund or active sales. So imposing them would be unduly burdensome and frankly unworkable. For that, I'd ask that the bill revise the exemption to add non-endowment care cemeteries in 451-07055. Thank you. Those are all my comments.
Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you so much. Let's move to opposition. Is there anyone in opposition? I don't see anyone here in Las Vegas AVH. Is there anyone online?
To testify in opposition on AB 350, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
Think let's go to neutral. Anyone wishing to testify in neutral? I don't see anyone here or in Las Vegas AVH. Is there anyone online?
Testify in neutral, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you so much. We do have a comment from Mr. Robbins, our committee counsel, and so he'll make his comment. And then, so Mr. Robbins.
Eric Robbins, LCB Legal, for the record. I just wanted to kind of clarify as far as the applicability, as far as Senator Titus's question from earlier. The exemption for government owned cemeteries actually only applies to subsection 2 of section 5. So basically everything in this bill would still apply to government-owned cemeteries. The only thing that they would be exempt from is subsection 2 of section 5 authorizes a cause of action to enforce the provisions of section 5 about like the duty to maintain the cemetery basically. And so there would be no cause of action against a government owned cemetery for that, but in theory it still would apply to them.
Thank you so much, Mr. Robbins. Any other comments from the committee members before I close the bill hearing? Senator Titus, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, I think that I would have I have a little concerns about that because we do have, even in my old valley, we have several very old cemeteries that are now in parts of fields and those kind of things, and I just would worry about the impact and if it would mandate that they are culpable or responsible if the care is not there. So I have some concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if our bill presenters, I see a tar down south. Mr. Hasabula, if you want to go ahead.
Yes, just for the record, Atar Hasibula, ACLU of Nevada. Well, thank you again for your willingness to hear this bill. Our viewpoint in discussing this with the counties, municipalities, and with NACO was that removing potential civil cause of action, as well as certain provisions that were included, would actually mitigate it against any potential challenges there. We're happy to make that more clear if that's necessary. We do know that the portions that we included in the provision that was included thereby was done for that reason. The other portion that was also included, Senator Titus, to your initial question, the sort of removal of the transfer authority, we did that in part because we do know that for many government entities, owning or possessing a cemetery is not a fruitful financial decision and not easy to maintain. There's very little benefit. So we tried to be as comprehensive as possible. I'm happy to certainly work on that in the meantime. And we do know that we try to wrap as early as possible, just in the wishful hopes that we might get a work session today, but I'll just leave that with the committee.
Just a quick follow-up. Did you say NACO has been part of this and NACO is okay with this bill?
Yeah,
That's what I saw NACO out there. So maybe they could come, because I just want to make sure those rural counties that are on board, and you know where I'm talking about.
Hello, Amy Hines-Sutherland, for the record, with the Nevada Association of Counties. So yes, we have been working with the sponsor, provided feedback on impacts to counties. They, considering what they wanted to accomplish with this bill and make sure that everybody, the initial intent of the bill, NACO understands, like, you want to respect that remains shouldn't be moved without the approval of a family member and things like that. So have all of the impacts to counties been taken out? No. There will still be maintenance requirements that counties will need to work through. But they did work with us certainly on getting provisions for, say, historical sites, tombs, making sure that where you have a historical cemetery, you will not have the same maintenance impacts. So I can say we are neutral on this, but I would say we did not get to a place of no county impact, but we did very much appreciate the sponsors working with us to mitigate impact.
Let me ask one question, and then Senator Titus, I think we're about to say the same thing. Are there cases of graveyards or cemeteries that have been not designated as a historical site, but have been around in the community for a while? I guess that's the only.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Or Amy Hines-Sutherland, for the record. Thank you for the question. Yes, I believe so. That there are county-owned cemeteries in the state that are not designated as historical markers, but might be quite old and need significant adjustments per this bill language. Yes.
Maybe perhaps after this hearing, we can talk about grandfathering those specifically. Obviously, if the maintenance and so forth may be historically significant. Perhaps it might even be an impediment of disrupting what has been there in terms of history. But
right, exactly, because we have literally in my valley, we have 3 cemeteries that are historical, but they don't have a designation as historical, and so I have real concerns. And the county owns them, and you have a cemetery maintenance group, and we do our best because I have relatives buried there. So I really worry about the potential impact on rural counties with those type of cemeteries.
If I may, for the record, Atar Hasibula, Senator Titus, what we can do as well in the next couple of days, obviously I know we're up against a deadline, and we're going to want this to get through, obviously based on all the provisions. We're happy to include a provision that would give counties the enabling authority to designate those specific cemeteries as historical sites, so they would end up falling under the gambit of this, and we wouldn't have to deal with those concerns. Certainly, that's not the intent behind this, and our view was removing the civil liability provisions would have mitigated against all harm there. But we can make that more clear, and certainly I think that should suffice for the remaining counties. I don't know that there's much we could do beyond that in the way of language.
Well, thank you for that. I'll continue to talk to NACO on what really works. Thank you. Thank you for the willingness to hear that.
Thank you so much. At this time, we'll go ahead and close the bill hearing on Assembly Bill 350, and we'll move on to Assembly Bill 360. And we will invite our co-presenters to begin. You may begin.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Heather Goulding. I represent Assembly District 27 in the north side of Reno. I'm honored to present Assembly Bill 360 to you today, a critical piece of public health legislation designed to address the alarming rise in congenital syphilis in Nevada. Congenital syphilis occurs when a syphilis infection is transmitted from a pregnant woman to her baby during pregnancy or birth. AB 360 builds upon AB 192, which passed in the 2021 legislative session. That bill required hospital emergency departments to test pregnant women for syphilis if they had not already received prenatal care. However, we've since learned that this testing is often not routinely conducted when pregnant patients visit the emergency room for reasons other than their pregnancy. AB 360 aims to close this gap, increasing access to syphilis screening and treatment for pregnant women, specifically those that are highest risk of syphilis, those who have not received prenatal care, and we're intervening with them at the place that they most frequently receive health care, in emergency rooms. Today I'm joined by two distinguished physicians who bring firsthand insight to this issue. First, Dr. Naik, an emergency room physician in Las Vegas, will speak to the practical need for this bill from the emergency room perspective. And then Dr. Dieter, chair of pediatrics at the UNR School of Medicine and Renown's Children's Hospital, will discuss the tragic consequences that occur when syphilis is left untreated during pregnancy. Dr. Naik is with us in Las Vegas, and I invite him to join us.
Good afternoon, Senator Dunyate and Senators of the Health and Human Services Committee. I'm Dr. Nehal Naik, that's Nehal-Naik. I'm a board-certified emergency physician, and I serve patients throughout the Las Vegas area. I'm here to express my support for AB 360. In the Assembly hearing, the colleagues in the other House heard from my colleagues in different specialties about the devastating effects of congenital syphilis. In Clark County alone in 2022, there are 50 cases of congenital syphilis. Emergency departments play a key role in this public health effort. Nationwide, about 21 to 58% of pregnant women use an emergency department at some point during their pregnancy. One study also showed that 50.8% of ED visits for pregnant women are in the first trimester. Particularly in the Medicaid and uninsured patients, the use of ED care during pregnancy is notably higher. I also serve as the medical director for Elite Medical Center, an emergency center for emergency care as an extension of Valley Hospital in Las Vegas. Our ED, due to its ease of access, ability to provide high-level emergency care, frequently see women in their first trimester. These facilities provide a perfect avenue to address congenital syphilis. With this bill not only mandating testing, but ensuring that every facility has the resources to quickly test for syphilis. This bill specifically addresses concerns within the emergency department of throughput and rapidity of our evaluation. It specifically states that serologic testing that can be performed if it reasonably results before the patient leaves. Otherwise, a rapid point of care test can be used. This bill allows support for me as an emergency physician to ensure that my facilities have the resources they need to test and treat. For example, if a patient is otherwise in early syphilis without any severe findings, it's treatable by me. I can treat this with a shot of penicillin and ensure that and encourage continued follow-up with the patient's OBGYN. If the patient does show with signs of late syphilis or any other further signs, treatment can be started in the ED and continued with the OBGYN. Our hospitals already communicate with the Southern Nevada Health District on communicable disease, including syphilis, which can help in coordinating with care. This question of asking patients about pregnancy status and desire for syphilis screening can be incorporated into a nursing triage with the blood draw done early within an emergency department stay. We can do this quickly in the ED and address a key public health concern for our state. One of the biggest things I have for this bill is the concern on the, in the 2021 bill says, I have to test and provide testing and potential treatment only for those who come in potentially with pregnancy-related symptoms. We're still missing a huge percentage of the population who may come in with other complaints, but in initial triage say, by the way, I'm pregnant. And this bill encourages and requires us to say, well, have you considered other testing? Do you want testing for syphilis? Did you know that for your unborn baby, it can cause huge issues if you're positive? Now, some of my colleagues I may say this is an undue burden if someone coming in and may make it harder for them to provide adequate emergency care. I think the amount of time it takes to do the effort for what's right for the patient and the right for future Nevadans, the babies that are about to be born here, is so much more valuable than that short amount of time it takes. I frequently see patients who come who are pregnant in the ED, and they often come with either pregnancy symptoms. They often come scared, confused, especially if they're having pregnancy-related symptoms. Many of them don't even know about congenital syphilis. Our group, our physician group, already helps treat for patients at our main hospital sites where we have the adequate testing and serological testing to get the testing to come back and potentially treat. That being said, the testing is not that quick. This bill requires that every facility have adequate testing that comes back before the patient leaves the encounter for care. And that's an important piece for us, is that we may be able to communicate afterwards if there's a positive test and let the health department know, but then the patient that then gets what? A letter, a phone call. That's not personal. What I love about my job is that I can have that conversation early, discuss with the patient, hey, there's something wrong. We can treat it. And let's help you get the resources you need to make sure that you have prenatal care and treatment throughout your pregnancy. Let's make Nevadans safer and healthier and hope for healthy babies. I'm currently on paternity leave with a 7-week-old little girl and was able to ensure good prenatal care for her and my partner. I want to ensure the same for every Nevadan. So I urge you to support AB 360. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chair Doñate and Vice Chair Taylor. My name is Chris, K-R-I-S, Dieter, D-E-E-T-E-R, M.D., M.B.A. I'm the Chair of Pediatrics at UNR Medical School and the Physician-in-Chief at Renown Children's Hospital. I'm board certified in both pediatric critical care and general pediatrics. I'm here today in support of AB 360 and would like to offer you the child's perspective, as most are unable to speak for themselves. I've been in practice for over 25 years and have personally witnessed the positive impact of prenatal screening and in the treatment of diseases like syphilis. I've also seen the painful consequences for the baby when the mother does not receive prenatal screening. You've heard about the possible consequences of misdiagnosis in syphilis, including stillbirth and prematurity. When a pregnant woman has syphilis, the infection can spread in utero before the child is born. Delayed diagnosis and treatment can lead to delayed persistent clinical features, including intellectual disability, skin rashes, hearing and visual deficits, severe anemia, meningitis, liver failure, splenomegaly, and skeletal abnormalities. By default, we actually enroll all of our babies born with syphilis in our Nevada Early Education Program, Early Intervention Services, because we assume that they're going to have intellectual disabilities, potentially autism and developmental delays from the start. It's the only default population that we actually slide straight into that program. While awaiting lab confirmation of findings at birth, a baby has to go through an extensive workup. This is where the pain starts for the baby. They're taken from their mother soon after birth, held down in our newborn lab. We then attempt to collect blood from them. So you can picture a little chubby arm and a little tiny blood vessel. It's not easy, and it often requires multiple attempts. Then we have to do a spinal tap where one provider curls the baby up in fetal position, and the other provider pokes the needle in the base of the spine to collect CSF, or fluid from around the spine and brain. They're then admitted to the neonatal unit for multiple x-rays, brain imaging, an eye exam, and a hearing exam. In order to protect them from further disability, we have to quickly start treatment. While prenatal treatment for the pregnant mother could have been that one shot of bicillin, For the baby, instead, we have to place a deep IV line, often a PICC line, so that it doesn't fall out during the treatment. We have to expose them to more x-rays to confirm placement of that line. And then we have to give them 10 days of IV penicillin before they can even go home for the first time to their family. As their doctor, my heart breaks for these littles, knowing all of this was preventable. As this is only their first week of life, after diagnosis and treatment of syphilis, close monitoring is required, with repeat blood draws every 2 to 3 months, repeat imaging, spinal taps, eye exams, etc. All of this could have been avoided with improved screening and prenatal care for young mothers. Thank you for your attention to this matter and for prioritizing children in our state.
Thank you to both doctors for joining us and providing information. Heather Goulding for the record. The core goal of AB 360 is simple: increase syphilis screening and treatment among high-risk pregnant women to protect babies from congenital syphilis. To highlight the main components of the bill, AB 360 requires that emergency departments perform rapid or point-of-care syphilis testing for pregnant women during their ER visit, with some flexibility for providers regarding the specific test method. The bill accounts for clinical factors, whether the woman has been tested within the past 3 months and has a known history of syphilis. If the test is positive, treatment must be initiated during that same visit, unless the patient declines. If a woman refuses testing, that refusal must be clearly documented in her medical record. The bill ensures that Medicaid will reimburse providers for the rapid or point-of-care test. And importantly, the bill also requires hospitals and other medical facilities to adopt formal policies that guarantee syphilis testing and treatment protocols are in place and in alignment with best practices. These policies must ensure that testing is offered regardless of why a pregnant woman presents at the facility and that refusals are documented. By ensuring pregnant women are screened and treated for syphilis, AB 360 will reduce preventable congenital syphilis cases, it will prevent infant deaths, and it will lower healthcare costs both in the neonatal period and for many years after in a child's life. On behalf of the many lives that this bill stands to protect and improve, I respectfully request your support for Assembly Bill 360, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Committee members, do we have questions? Senator Titus.
Well, thank you all for being here. I appreciate the bill. Doctors, thank you for being here. Having seen cases when I did my NICU training, it's pretty dramatic. Having said that, question. First, thank you for recognizing the rural areas and the smaller clinics in Section 8 and making an acknowledgement of that. When you added the definition of the duly licensed physician throughout this bill, it says physician assistant, advanced practice, registered nurse, or physician. Do the nurse midwives have a separate title? Why were they not added specifically, or did you think you covered them with nurse, the advanced practice registered nurse?
My understanding is that they're covered, though I'm going to call a friend. They're covered within the definition already.
So the nurse midwives are considered advanced practice registered nurses? Yes. All right, thank you. Just want to make sure everybody is doing this. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, let's go ahead and open it up for testimony. If you would like to go ahead and support this bill, please come forward. We'll ask our co-presenter down south to take a step back so that folks can come forward. You may begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Donati and members of the committee. My name is Jen Howell, Howell, Sexual Health Program Supervisor at Northern Nevada Public Health. I'm here to testify in support of AB 360. Nevada currently ranks 6th in the nation for congenital syphilis rates, and Nevada's congenital syphilis rate is 232 cases per 100,000 live births, while the national rate is 105.87 cases per 100 live births, so almost or over double. Washoe County is experiencing an increase in cases, with Clark County having experienced increases during different time periods since 2005. Rural communities are also facing an increase in cases with less resources and experience with syphilis than Washoe and Clark counties. The CDC has noted that congenital syphilis cases are a sentinel health event that should be examined to identify where prevention, testing, and treatment efforts broke down. Among maternal cases of congenital syphilis, many characteristic trends have been identified. These include polysubstance use with meth and fentanyl as most commonly reported substances, unstable housed or unhoused, justice system involvement, unplanned pregnancies, transactional sex involvement, missed opportunities of intervention in emergency departments where people are presenting for care for a variety of reasons, and lack of resources or health literacy needed to participate in prenatal care. For example, from 2017 to 2022, 57.4% of maternal cases in Clark County had visits to the emergency department. Congenital syphilis and syphilis have a tremendous impact on the health of Nevadans. It's crucial to advance interventions that allow for timely treatment, to prevent cases transmitted to babies, and to reduce the burden of this preventable disease overall. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Donante and members of the Health and Human Services Committee. I want to thank Assemblywoman Goulding for bringing this bill forward. My name is Dr. Tim McFerrin, MCFARREN. I'm a board-certified OBGYN. During my career, I've had the privilege to deliver more than 5,000 babies, and many times I'm asked, which ones do you remember? Unfortunately, many of the ones I remember are the sad cases. And this is the way it is with congenital syphilis. When one presents a baby to the mother, knowing that the baby is blind and has multiple problems, it's something that no one can forget. Knowing that this baby may not see, may not hear, may not walk. The emotional, physical, and financial costs to the mother, to the family, and society are unmeasurable. And that is why this bill is so important. The only way to prevent congenital syphilis is by screening and early treatment. And that is what this bill does. This bill will prevent congenital syphilis, and I urge you to support AB 360. Thank you.
Ian Hartshorn, Hartshorn for the Nevada Faculty Alliance. Thank you, Chair and committee members. The Nevada Faculty Alliance supports AB 360. We support legislation that promotes and ensures public health and legislation that takes the advice of our colleagues in medical professional associations. We note that the Public Employees Benefit Program has determined this bill will have no fiscal impact for them. Healthy children means a healthier Nevada. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Allison Herzik, Director of Nevada Government Relations for Dignity Health St. Rose Dominican. Dignity Health has partnered with the FOCUS program to integrate routine screening for several communicable diseases, including HIV, hepatitis C, and syphilis in our emergency rooms. This program allows us to capture individuals who are not in routine primary care, screen and test them when indicated, and if they are positive, provide linkage to care services to get them into the primary care system. So we're in full support of Assembly Bill 360, and we want to thank Assemblymember Goulding for her work on this bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and Committee. My name is Sabrina Schnur, Sabrina Schnur, and I am here today on behalf of the Nevada Primary Care Association, the state's federally qualified health centers, and we are in support. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Patrick Kelly with the Nevada Hospital Association. Due to the late hour, I'll be brief. Syphilis bad, bill good. Thank you.
Blaine Osborne, Nevada Rural Hospital Partners, for the record. We too oppose syphilis and support this bill. Thank you.
Tough acts to follow. Hi, Bradley Mayer of Argenta Partners on behalf of the Southern Nevada Health District. Today, of course, you've heard a lot about the issues related to that. I just want to share a few stats real quick and lend our support to Assemblymember Goulding and this bill. So in the last 5 years, Clark County's had an average rate of 172 cases per 100,000 live births. Those cases have increased by 1,633% from 2014 to 2023. And so although syphilis testing is required, and we actually worked on a version of this bill a couple years ago, women who give birth to infants with congenital syphilis report no prenatal care. And that's why this is important. So a report of our 2024 surveillance data found that 56.9% of women with congenital syphilis had no prenatal care, and 57.4% visited the emergency department at least once during pregnancy. And so I think these stats and what's really going on out there necessitates a need for this. And so I thank you for your time.
Can I ask a public health question? I don't know if there's anyone that can answer it. So my go ahead. Yep. No. Yeah. Come on. Obviously, we've talked about just the increase of making sure that folks are being tested for surveillance and so forth. Are there any other sites that we should consider as part of this that we're not capturing right now?
Jennifer Howell for the record. I think we captured like where our main gap is, and that's emergency departments for people who present for a variety of issues. It may not be for pregnancy-related issues. And that's where we've identified the biggest gap when we reviewed cases. So, and urgent cares don't have a designation that we could have included them in that. So.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. Any other folks in support? I don't see anyone here or in Las Vegas. AVH, is there anyone online?
To testify in support on AB 360, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Chair Dunyate and members of the Senate Health and Human Services Committee. My name is Jamel Nance. I'm the Early Childhood Policy Director with the Children's Advocacy Alliance, and I'm here speaking in strong support of AB 360. This bill strengthens health protections for pregnant people and their babies by ensuring timely, accessible syphilis testing. This legislation is critical because untreated syphilis during pregnancy can lead to stillbirth, birth defects, and long-term health complications for newborns, as you heard today. Children who are exposed to syphilis during birth have high rates of medical and developmental delays. These delays can include intellectual disability, visual and hearing impairments, and other disorders that are alarming. For many of these children, the state will be covering these extensive services through Medicaid. And unfortunately, AB 360 mandates rapid point-of-care testing, ensuring that expectant mothers, especially those who have not received prenatal screenings, get tested and treated immediately. By requiring Medicaid and private insurers to cover these rapid tests, AB 360 removes the financial barriers, making screenings more accessible to low-income families and communities of color who face higher rates of congenital syphilis. This bill is a public health win by promoting early intervention, preventing unnecessary infant deaths, and reducing long-term health care costs. Ensuring that every baby has a healthy start at life is a shared responsibility. Please consider supporting AB 360, and thank you for your consideration.
Good afternoon, Chair Donate, Vice Chair Taylor, members of the Senate Health and Human Services Committee. My name is Jacqueline Nguyen, Nguyen, and I represent the Nevada State Medical Association. NSMA supports comprehensive preventative care for all patients. The performance of a rapid test for syphilis at the point of contact for pregnant patients is important for early detection and treatment. We did the support testimony of many of our colleagues today, and we are in full support of AB 360. Thank you.
Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you so much. Let's move on to opposition. I don't see anyone here or in Las Vegas. AVH, is there anyone online?
To testify in opposition, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition.
Thank you so much. Let's move on to neutral. Anyone wishing to testify in neutral, please come forward. You may begin.
Good afternoon, committee and chair. My name is Nicole Flangus, here on behalf of the Nevada Association of Health Plans, a statewide trade organization representing 11 member companies that provide commercial health insurance and government programs to Nevadans. While we appreciate the intent behind this legislation, this, along with many others, have mandates that come with unintended consequences that can drive up costs for consumers and reduce plan flexibility. These increased costs ultimately translate to higher out-of-pocket premiums and deductibles and out-of-pocket expenses for employers and individuals. Additionally, mandates can limit consumer choice by requiring all policyholders pay for coverage that they may not want or need, reducing flexibility in plan options. As an association, we remain committed to enhancing healthcare quality and accessibility and welcome the opportunity to continue to collaborate on policy solutions that align with the goals here, ensuring Nevadans have access to affordable, sustainable healthcare coverage. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Dunyate, members of the committee. Adam Plain, P-L-A-I-N, with the Nevada Division of Insurance. The division is neutral on Assembly Bill 360. I did submit written testimony giving a little bit of a detailed breakdown, talking about the issue of federal defrayal, everyone's favorite topic. We wanted to note that while Assembly Bill 360 does not actually touch the insurance code at all, there are 4 statutes in chapters 689A, 695B, 695C, and 695G, which do adopt NRS 442.010 explicitly by reference. So changes to those underlying statutes do affect insurance coverages. The division reviewed the change to 442.010 and has determined that as currently constituted, there would be no defrayal effect because the requirement to cover serological based and other testing for syphilis is a United States Preventive Services Task Force item under a rating A or B. I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
I have a question more of the semantics of it. The last portion, it's my understanding that that could be one of the potential things that could be overturned federally. How does that affect if that does happen?
For the record, Adam Plain, Division of Insurance, that's a very astute question, Chair Dunyate. I believe what you're referring to is the case Braidwood v. Kennedy Jr., which was argued before the United States Supreme Court late last month. I would say that as it relates to Assembly Bill 360, Braidwood v. Kennedy Jr. would have no effect directly. The statutes underlying the United States Preventive Services Task Force recommendations exist already. Those statutes in 442 and the insurance code already exist. So if the United States Supreme Court were to rule in favor of the plaintiffs in Braidwood in a variety of fashions, regardless of whether Assembly Bill 360 passes or not, the state will have to deal with the fallout of the United States Preventive Services Task Force potentially being nullified.
Great, thank you, sir. I think we only have one question for the bill presenter, so you can go ahead and take a step back. Is there anyone else in neutral in Las Vegas? AVH, is there anyone online?
To testify in neutral on AB 360, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you so much. If our bill presenter could come forward. Senator Titus.
Thank you, Chair, and sorry to bring you back up here. You probably wanted a closing remark anyway. I just wanted to make sure one of my frustrations sometimes with these mandates, which I accept this, is that insurance companies say, oh yeah, it's covered, it's a covered test, and you're mandating that it's covered, but then they put it in the bundled fees for the care, say a pregnancy care. So ultimately somebody pays for it and it's not insurance companies. I want to be clear that your bill and the initial description, it says it does require Medicaid to reimburse for the rapid test or the point of care separate from when they would be billing for care of a pregnant person, correct?
Heather Goulding for the record, yes.
Okay.
Stacy Weeks specifically made sure that that was included, that it's unbundled.
Right. And that, back to that bundle, but it doesn't mandate that insurance companies, if somebody comes in and they're insured, they could say, well, that's part of being pregnant. Because one of the articles that you did leave me, it was talking that they were all, oh yeah, it's covered, but it's all bundled in a pregnancy delivery situation. And so I'm just wanting to make sure that reimbursement's out there, that you've obviously recognized it with the Medicaid aspect, but I'm wondering about the private insurance.
Thank you for the question. I'm not an insurance expert, so I can get back to you with a more specific response. What's important to know about this bill is that we're addressing a population that's an uninsured population. So this was a huge collaborative effort with a large group of stakeholders, a very broad, large group of stakeholders, and we considered all of those possibilities. I can't answer right now, but I will get back to you on that. But the highest risk population that's going to the emergency room is not typically somebody who has insurance.
Yeah, thank you for that. Just wanted to make sure we're holding some of the other insurance companies responsible too, but I appreciate that. Just want to make sure. I like the bill, and I think it's, as a fiscal conservative, this makes fiscal sense, not to mention helping babies, but it also saves us money in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I don't think we have any other questions unless if you have any closing remarks.
I just want to thank you so much, Heather Goulding, for the record, for considering the bill. In short, the bill will save lives and reduce suffering, and I thank you for considering it.
Thank you so much. At this time, I'll go ahead and close this bill hearing and move on to our final one, which is Assembly Bill 461. And I will go ahead and invite Assemblyman Orrin Licker to begin. This bill revises provisions governing health care, so please begin when you're ready. And I believe you have a co-presenter as well.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of HHS. Thanks for hearing AB 461. And we do have Professor Nina Cohn joining us, who was the drafter of this Model Act, and she'll be remarking after I and Angel Hood, my intern from University of Nevada, Reno, will go through the act. So just as background, AB 461 would enact the 2023 version of the Uniform Healthcare Decisions Act. And this is a model act from the Uniform Law Commission, which, if you're not familiar with it, this is a not-for-profit organization that brings together judges, practicing lawyers, scholars, and other experts, all lawyers, to develop model laws in areas where states regulate, but it's desirable to have uniformity. So when you go from state to state, you don't have to change the law every time you cross a state boundary. So this one is for healthcare decisions, and it's important. We have a lot of people who come to Nevada from other states, and it would be good if they didn't have to change the rules they have to follow, or when doctors come from other states who are trained in California or Wisconsin, that what they learn about healthcare decisions carries over to Nevada. As I said, everybody who's participates in the Uniform Law Commission, which include Assembly members Shea Backus and I and some of our other colleagues, are lawyers. But all of these acts get input. They're observers and advisors who don't need to be lawyers. So Professor Cohn will talk about the different participants in this process who come from the healthcare setting and other relevant settings. We already have a Uniform Act in statute that this is updating, but it goes back to what originally was drafted in 1985 and updated in 1989. Then the original, that was called the Act on the Rights of the Terminally Ill. Then in 1993, we got the original Uniform Healthcare Decisions Act. We've learned a lot in the past 40 years about healthcare, making healthcare decisions, how to write good advance directives. So the 2023 Act draws on 40 years of experience to improve what we originally adopted in 1991 and to make sure our laws reflect the lessons we've learned. There's also a provision, I'll talk about a little more, about a public awareness campaign. This came from the Native Voters Alliance of Nevada to provide information about the importance of planning for long-term care. It's an important area to plan for. Not everybody does, and so this is an important addition to the act. Okay, so the important part is to fit this act, what about making decisions for people who've lost their capacity? Right? So at some point, we all will lose our capacity to make healthcare decisions, and it's important to have good rules for doctors and families and patients to make sure that decisions are carried out appropriately, medically and ethically. One important way is an advanced healthcare directive. You can living will, term, power of attorney. So that's an important way to provide instructions. Here's the kind of treatment I want or don't want, or here's an agent or surrogate I want to make decisions for me. And we adopted the model form 2 years ago. It also provides guidance for decisions for patients who don't complete an advance directive. I think we're up to more than half the public now, but still, a lot of people don't complete these directives, and decisions have to be made for them. So this act gives guidance on how to do that. This is about decisions for treatment to be provided. Do you get a ventilator at the end of life? And I want to be clear, it's not just about the end of life. The original act was about terminally ill patients, but a lot of important decisions are made for people who don't have capacity when they're not at the end of life. And so this fills an important gap in our law. So it's about medical treatment provided, withheld, or withdrawn. Nothing about, this does not authorize mercy killing, assisted suicide, or euthanasia. We do have another bill that gets into that area. This does not. And as I mentioned, Assembly Member Shea Backus and I are members of the Uniform Law Commission. She was the vice chair of the drafting committee, and I also served on the drafting committee. So we had very good input for Nevada on this model act. Okay, and now Ms. Hood, I'll turn her over to continue as we go through some of the provisions.
Hello, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Angel Hood. That's Angelhod. I'm just going to be going over some of the elements of AB 461. So sections 4 through 27 provide just some definitions for key terms within the bill. Sections 28 through 31 address the capacity to 1, make healthcare decisions, and 2, give instructions for future decisions. People are described as having capacity when they understand the nature and consequences of the decision, including, without limitation, the primary risks and benefits of the decision. People are presumed to have capacity unless found otherwise by a court or healthcare professional, and the bill does include a process for patients to challenge a finding of incapacity. Section 32 recognizes a person's authority to give instructions for future care, either orally, in writing, or by other means, like a video recording, including their choice of doctor, hospital, and surrogate decision maker. Section 33 recognizes a person's authority to formally appoint a surrogate decision maker agent to make decisions in the event of incapacity. This is through a power of attorney form or other record that is signed by the person and a witness, and may include specific instructions for future care. Sections 34 through 35 recognize a person's authority to create an advanced healthcare directive specifically for mental health care. This allows for Ulysses clauses that waive the right to revoke the directive during specific psychiatric or physiological events, meaning that a clause is applied when a directive is created when the individual is stable, and clauses that are, or directives that are created when they are experience a specific psychiatric or physiological event are revoked. Sections 36 through 38 recognizes default surrogates if a person has not formally appointed one through a power of attorney. This may include someone the person has identified, which is discussed in sections 32, a spouse or other family member, a cohabitant, or someone who has previously assisted the person in making decisions or who has exhibited special care and concern. And people are able to disqualify potential default surrogates orally or in writing.
Thank you. I'll now continue. David Orentlicker for the record. Section 39 addresses revocation. Some people fill out an advance directive, change their mind, and so it's important to have provisions about revoking. And there's automatic revocation upon divorce, which is common with legal documents, especially financial ones, when the presumption is that people probably don't want their ex-spouse, but that can be waived. If the person wants their ex-spouse, they can have them stay on as their surrogate. Section 40, important, especially we're in Nevada. If you create your advance directive in another state, it's valid if it complies with Nevada law or it complies with the other state's law. We don't force you to redo your advance directive. This bill would not force you to redo it when you come to Nevada. Section 41 describes the fiduciary duties. We want to make sure the person who's either appointed as a surrogate or as the default surrogate for the patient never got around to appointing carries out their acts responsibly for the patient. That means when they make decisions, it should be based on the instructions the patient left, patient's goals and preferences, and if there's no patient didn't leave instructions, the fallback is what's in the patient's best interest, taking into account their medical condition, what their doctors recommend, and so on. Section 42, there are powers of attorney that take effect when they're written and signed, like a financial power of attorney. But for a healthcare surrogate, it takes effect when the patient loses capacity. If the patient has capacity, you want the patient to decide. But once they lose capacity, surrogate kicks in. If the patient regains capacity, they get to decide again. Section 43, let's say you have a patient who has a long-term disability that required artificial ventilation, nutrition, or hydration. They wanted to help them with their disability. The presumption is they would want the treatment continued unless they say otherwise. Section 44 allows appointment of co-agents. You have 2 kids, you can make them both your agents. Section 45 describes the duties of healthcare professionals to respect the patient's instructions or those of surrogates, and also to make sure they try to identify if there is a surrogate. And there are exceptions for professional or institutional conscience. Some people are uncomfortable withdrawing life-sustaining treatment, and the standard in this act and already in our law is not to force them to transfer care that's not consistent with generally accepted healthcare standards. This is about patients choosing whether to follow their doctor's recommendations, not to dictate what doctors offer. Section 47, very important, good faith immunity for healthcare professionals. We don't want them to have to worry about liability if they carry out a patient's instructions, so complying or not complying with surrogate decisions. If they do it in good faith, there will be no civil or criminal liability. And again, as I mentioned before, Section 51 now is where it talks about this does not authorize mercy killing, assisted suicide, euthanasia. And if you do withdraw life-sustaining care, that's not a suicide or homicide, including for purposes of insurance or annuity death benefits. Then we have a lot of sections that include conforming changes in the 50s, 60s, and 70s sections. Section 60, this is the one that I mentioned from the Native Voters Alliance of Nevada, requiring creation of a public awareness campaign about the importance of planning for long-term care. And the Aging and Disability Services Division is comfortable with the idea of this, and it won't create a fiscal impact. Section 71 makes conforming changes. Ms. Hood talked about the Advanced Directive for Mental Health Care. We already have a model form, so we don't need to add that. This Section 71 makes conforming changes. And I mentioned the model form for a general advance directive, already in statute. We adopted that 2 years ago in AB 414. We have, as you'll notice, there's a conceptual amendment. So in the past few weeks, I've discussed the bill with some stakeholders who've raised questions about it. That's why we had some changes in the assembly to respond to concerns about guardianships. And the conceptual amendment you have has a few more changes. The first one, which is to section 36(1)A. Some questions have been asked about the turning to a default surrogate when the patient's appointed an agent and the agent's not available. Maybe they're overseas. And so we don't want to leave the patient hanging if the agent's not there. And so we have the authorization for the default surrogate. They've appointed child A. Child A is not available. Child A is undergoing surgery, maybe. So child B exists, and then we can turn to child B. And as if the agent's not reasonably available, and the conceptual amendment elaborates on that because of concerns to make sure they make reasonable efforts. So they have to use due diligence to try to locate and communicate with the agent before we turn to an alternative. Section 41 is respond to a suggestion from the Nevada Hospital Association to make sure that the surrogate, when they're deciding for the patient, considers the recommendations of the patient's doctors. And then Section 82 restores some previous provisions that we've model forms for people with intellectual disabilities or early dementia. So that is to restore that. So as I said, we've worked with the stakeholders to address concerns. As you've seen, there are some stakeholders who have continued concerns. We're happy to work with them. I will say, reading some of their objections, they seem to be based on a mischaracterization of the provisions. Some of the people seem to be looking at some of the processes for appeals of capacity, challenges of findings of incapacity. The provisions regarding findings of capacity are quite simple, quite standard. Professor Cohn will go into more detail, but it's standard for what doctors are doing today. It only gets complicated if after the doctor says, I don't think this patient has capacity and the patient disagrees, then we get into a complicated process because we want to make sure patients are protected. If somebody says you don't have capacity, we want to give them a fair opportunity to challenge that. And that does get a little complicated. But in the 99% of cases, it's going to be clear the patient either has capacity or not, and we're not going to get into that process. So I will now turn it over to Professor Cohn, and thank you, and I'll look forward to your questions after her presentation.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Nina Cohn, Nina-Kohn. I was the reporter for the Uniform Healthcare Decisions Act, and that act was the product of a 3+ year drafting process that benefited from very active participation by a large, broad, and diverse group of experts. This included experts representing healthcare providers, those with deep expertise in healthcare administration, hospital administration, palliative care, emergency medicine, nursing, to name a few areas. We brought in disability rights leaders, including the ARC, the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, Not Dead Yet. We brought in people who represent older adults, including the ABA Commission on Law and Aging and AARP. We brought in lawyers who represent patients, lawyers who represent providers. We brought in mental health experts, including those who work with families and advocate passionately for mental health consumers. We brought in experts on POLST, on organ donation, you name it, the list goes on and on. And together what we were trying to do is learn from the decades of experience with the first generation act, that's the one that Nevada has now, to create a law that would be better for patients, families, and providers. So I'm just going to highlight a few of the ways that this act would improve upon Nevada's current law. First, as you know, Nevada, like many states, currently puts patients and providers in a really untenable position by not providing a clear standard of what level of capacity is needed to make or terminate an advance directive, or what level of capacity a patient needs to make decisions for themselves. Similarly, like most states, Nevada currently provides no statutory guidance for what a provider should do if a patient objects to a surrogate making a decision for them or objects to a finding that they lack capacity. And this is a really huge problem. Let me just put it in perspective for you. Let's imagine that I create an advance directive and I name my husband as my agent. But on the eve of a major surgery, I announce that he's the devil, and that I want this woman I met last week who has some voice of an angel to be my surrogate instead. Now, I present a signed advance directive to my doctor, and my doctor looks at it and thinks, this doesn't smell right, and is kind of concerned about my grasp on reality. But can my doctor look to my husband to make decisions? Does he have to look to this newfound angel-voiced friend? Nevada's statutes are silent. Similarly, imagine that I've long insisted that I want everything to be done. I want to be kept alive no matter what. But I'm diagnosed with dementia and I have an immediate reaction. I tear up my existing advance directive and I write a new one saying I want no life-sustaining care. Which direction should the doctor follow? Nevada statute really doesn't provide much guidance. All it says is that I need to be of sound mind to make a binding declaration. Well, if I have a diagnosis of dementia, am I of sound mind? I have no idea. Or imagine, well, to give you one more, that I've appointed my husband as my agent, but I still want to make decisions despite my dementia. My doctor says I lack capacity. I say, no, I can make decisions for myself. What now? Well, again, the state statute is silent. The new act, by contrast, would require a second opinion on the issue of capacity and would require court involvement if the situation involved a decision to withdraw life-sustaining treatment. Another key benefit of this act is that it expands the default surrogate provisions currently in state law. So currently, as you know, the state allows a default surrogate to make a decision only for a terminally ill person. And what that means is that when individuals haven't appointed somebody as their agent, one of two things is going to happen. Either a decision is going to be made without any surrogate there to protect the patient's wishes and values, or you're going to need to initiate a guardianship proceeding and go through the expense of that proceeding, a proceeding that is likely going to strip the person of virtually all of their rights, and is going to require the state to invest in ongoing monitoring. What this bill does is thus effectively create a really important, less restrictive alternative to guardianship. And that's a less restrictive alternative to guardianship that comes with some really important accountability. If you look at Section 41 of the bill, you'll see that that default surrogate is a fiduciary with clearly defined legal duties. And finally, I'll just note that the Act, including the optional
Ms.
form, which
Cohn.
you've already adopted.
Ms. Cohn, if you can complete your remarks, I think committee members have questions, and so I just want to make sure that
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'll just say part of what it does is expand access to advance directives, recognizing that many people are completing these on their own or without the assistance of an attorney. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Can we go ahead and begin with questions? Let's start with Senator Titus, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for bringing this forward. I appreciate the information. I was the one that had 2 sessions ago, I think, the bill to mandate April 16th as Healthcare Decisions Day here in Nevada, and I also was able to get the pulse changed from physicians to providers of what your choices are. So it's been an issue for me that I've been really important that we have those discussions. My question is regarding Section 28, and it lists, Section 29, those who those who can decide who has capacity, those folks who can determine whether an individual has capacity. And so that list in section 29A, a physician, licensed psychologist, an individual providing with training. It doesn't list what kind of training, a physician assistant, registered nurse, social worker, or responsible health professional, not otherwise mentioned. I have some concerns about that broad definition of someone who can determine capacity. And I'm wondering if that language, is it listed? It's new language. I don't, obviously it's a new part of this bill. What was the prior language? Because we're not striking anything out. And where were we before this current recommendation? And maybe our own attorney could tell us what the current list is of who could do capacity, because it seems like as this new wording, it's expanding it.
And I just have a quick follow-up for Senator Titus, from Senator Titus. And perhaps Ms. Cohn, if you can help us understand that, because I know you were part of the drafting of this nationally. I think there's also a concern that perhaps the definition is too broad in terms of who is considered a healthcare professional to be in this in this capacity. And so maybe if you could talk about some of the national conversations you've had, I think that would be helpful as well.
I'd be happy to do that. In terms of Nina Cohn again, in terms of the national conversation, part of the concern here was, especially in rural communities, that there might not be anyone who fell into category, the physician or licensed psychologist category available to make that determination in a situation in which it needs to be made in an urgent situation. And that by limiting what you see there as the third part to people, to these so-called lower level people who also have training and expertise, you would make it more viable to actually get those determinations made. And you're putting those additional requirements on those non-physician, non-psychologist people that are not on physicians or psychologists. There's actually some conversation, should we limit physicians to physicians who have training and expertise in capacity assessment? We decided not to do that, but for this other group, the training and expertise is required. But it was very much a goal to try to make sure that we were meeting the needs of rural communities.
Can I have a follow-up on that one? So does that, again, is there training available for other providers or other healthcare givers is there a formal training available to make sure this category even exists? Just where I'm coming from, I've done, literally as a healthcare, I was 30 plus years as a long-term care medical director. I have done lots of capacity evaluations. And I was just looking at what that means. Or who would you be training, and is there formal programs? So people, are you talking about a nurse's aide to that? Are you talking about a legal aid person? Are you who did you have in mind, and what did the chapter have in mind with that?
Well, I've certainly been to capacity assessment trainings, including ones run through the Department of Justice. But I do think you correctly identify that there is a need potentially for more training. Part of what this does is it sets forth what the capacity standard is. One of the challenges, I must admit, I've faced sometimes in doing trainings around capacity, or doing grand rounds for different systems is, when I go in and talk about, well, how would you assess capacity? Or what would you look at? The state may actually not have a capacity standard. Once you put in the type of capacity standard that this act does, then it creates the possibility of actually training to it. But Dr. Ornlicker, perhaps.
Yeah, I want to answer you, David Ornlicker, for the record. On your question, what is existing statute? If I look at 449A, a lot of the provisions refer to the physician or the advanced practice registered nurse. So in some way, this is narrower because it's not just any advanced practice registered nurse. It's an advanced practice registered nurse who has the appropriate training and expertise. So we've actually, we've added some healthcare providers, but we've actually narrowed the role of the advanced practice registered nurse to try to balance, on one hand, wanting to make sure you have access, because not every community is going to have physicians or licensed psychologists as readily available. So if we can draw on other providers, but making sure that they have the appropriate training, so it's not automatic because of their degree. So I think this kind, as I say, in some ways is narrows from where we are now.
And I actually look at it just the opposite, because the way you have the paragraphs broken out, again, section 29, and then you go 1, 2, and then 2 has A and 1 and 2, and 3, but then you have 4. And 3, you list the physician assistant, advanced registered nurse, or a clinical social worker, but then you add a whole nother 4 responsible healthcare professionals. So that's where I'm wondering what do you mean by that? Because that's a whole different section bouncing back out the 1, 2, and 3, and I just how I'm reading this.
David Orntlicker, for the record. A responsible healthcare provider is the person providing primary responsible for the patient's care at the time. So again, it's not, it sounds like it might be a very broad range, but in fact, it shouldn't be. But as I indicated, we're certainly happy to work through refinements, and this is one of this area where it sounds like we can make things, clarify things and tighten things up, and I'm happy to have discussions to make sure we get this right.
Thank you. Any other questions? Vice Chair Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Senator Dr. Ornlicker, for bringing this forth, as well as your co-presenters. I do have a couple of questions. As you mentioned, there are a lot of emails that are going around that may have different information. So I just want to have a little clarity on a few things. One of the concerns that I saw a lot was that it would increase litigation and family conflicts as opposed to decrease them. Can you respond to that?
Yeah, I'll start. David Orntlicker, for the record. I think one of the important points that Professor Cohn made was we have all these questions that we don't have spelled out answers in code. And that's where you get litigation, where things are unclear, and then doctors and hospitals don't know what their legal obligations are, and so that leads to court. Providing, spelling out answers to a lot of questions that come up regularly should do a lot to reduce litigation and give clarity to doctors, so they don't have to go to their lawyers, and the lawyers don't have to take the issue to court.
Follow-up, Chair. Thank you for the follow-up. Another question is, what other states have, I know this is an update, and I think you said, what's this, 40 years old or something like that, what we already have in statute. An update such as this and this, are there other states that have taken on the same kind of effort to the extent that we have, or are we kind of out there? My information I've received is that there are only maybe 1 or 2 others that have done it in this manner.
David Orntlicker, for the record. So this act was just adopted in 2023, fall of 2023. Delaware has adopted it. Utah just adopted it, I think 2 months ago, enacted it. There are 4 other, in addition, 4 other states that have it introduced this session. So, so it's not surprising we don't have 20 states because it just was adopted. But as Professor Cohn has indicated, given the careful vetting of this and the broad range of input, it's really ends up reflecting an area, and it was important, the breadth of consensus. You'll hear from the NSMA that has questions, but The American Medical Association had a representative participation, and the Uniform Law Commission, which will hear from stakeholders that have concerns, has not heard any concerns from the American Medical Association or the American Psychiatric Association. There are a lot of provisions that get debated and are controversial, but there was a very strong consensus around this act by the time it was adopted.
Thank you so much. Any other further questions? I think that may conclude our round of questions. The ones that I have are probably better reserved for offline, so I think we'll stop the questions now. Let's go ahead and open it up for testimony. So if you would like to go, if our representative can please take a step back. If you would like to provide support testimony, please come forward. I don't see anyone here in Las Vegas. AVH, is there anyone online?
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 461, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Hello, my name is Paula Luna, Paula-Luna, and I'm the Deputy Director of Battle-Born Progress. We urge the support of AB 461. We are in dire need of strengthening our healthcare decision-making. AB 461 will better inform and support our communities, and more importantly, would ease at least some of the burden during such a difficult time. Again, we urge you to pass this important legislation. Thank you.
Good evening, committee members. Todd Inglesby representing SEIU. We want to thank the sponsor. We want to urge the committee to support AB 461. We think this helps clear up an old law, and we think it's what families deserve and need, and we urge you to support this bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and Committee. My name is Suzanne Bryce, S-U-Z-A-N-N-E, Bryce, B-R-I-C-E, and I'm here in strong support of AB 461. It is every parent's worst fear that something will happen to our children and we won't be there to help them. I'm a mom to 2 adult children, and I also have a 13-year-old. And I am concerned about this. What if something happens to them, or what if something happens to me? And they're left not knowing what to do. AB 461 gives us a way to prepare for the unthinkable. It allows me to make my healthcare wishes clear so that my kids don't have to make those decisions in a moment of crisis. It gives families clarity, direction, peace of mind when it matters most. This isn't paperwork, it's protection. Please support AB 461. Thank you.
Chair, there are no additional callers for support.
Thank you. I see someone in Las Vegas if you want to proceed.
For the record, my name is Matilda Miller. That's Mathilda-Miller, Government Relations Director of Native Voters Alliance Nevada, and we are here in strong, unwavering support of Assembly Bill 461. When I was 18, I had to make too many life or death medical decisions for my dad while he was on a ventilator in the ICU for 2 months. I remember sitting at UNLV Student Union. I was exhausted. I was in tears. I was jumping between 30 to 40 different web pages, and I was trying to figure out and understand what procedures the doctors were asking me to approve. And I kept asking myself, is this something that my dad would want? Am I doing the right thing? Can I carry this burden? And I told myself that once my dad gets home, I never want to go through this again. Thankfully, my dad survived, but I'm still carrying the trauma of the decisions that I had to make without guidance. That moment didn't just change me, it forced me into adulthood way before I was ready. Now, 8 years later, my father is still facing the hardest battle of his life. We're trying to be as prepared as we can, but the truth is, I still feel as lost as I did at 18. I used to think that this was just something that happened to me, but it's not. I've spoken to my friends, my coworkers, and volunteers who have all shared similar stories where they were left confused, they were overwhelmed, and unsure of how to navigate medical decisions for someone that they love dearly. They didn't know what an advance directive was or what a medical power of attorney is, how it works, or how to even create one. So if you've ever had to care for a loved one and had to carry the weight of making medical choices for them, then you know how deeply personal this is. If you've ever wished for clarity, support, or peace of mind during a medical crisis, and this bill is for you too, we urge your support. Thank you.
And thank you so much for your comment. Anyone else wishing to testify in support? Let's go on to opposition. If you would like to testify in opposition, please come forward. I don't know if there's anyone in Las Vegas, but we can start here in Carson City. Please begin.
My name is Steve Takis. I'm an attorney, estate planning attorney, and I've done estate planning for the last 40 plus years. I chair the estate planning department at Kemper Crowe Law with offices in Las Vegas, Reno, and Carson City. I've been qualified in court as an expert in estate planning. I've done estate planning for people of all means, high means, no means. I've dealt with, across that spectrum, end-of-life decisions and many durable powers of attorney for health care. I'm in opposition to this bill because I see too many problems with it. And as the sponsor said, there's only one state that adopted it. They only adopted it recently. I reached out to colleagues in the state of Utah, could not find any who had anything they could tell me positive or negative because it was too new to be tested. I don't think it's wise for Nevada to become the test bed for this. As to specific problems, I see two fundamental problems. One, in an attempt to somehow put a definition around capacity, the working group has done considerable academic work, but doesn't look like they've done very much practical work. And they've come up with a definition which is essentially set forth in Section 28 that says if someone is willing and can communicate and they appear to know what they're talking about, then it is presumed that they have capacity. And what's the remedy? You go to court. So the suggestion that this doesn't drive things to court is just completely off base. I deal with these situations all the time. I'm in the ICU conference room with many physicians, with families, with clients, with friends, and there isn't time to go to court. And that's an expense that people can't afford or they don't want to afford at that point because they're more concerned about what are we doing with our loved one. And so I just see fundamental problems just from the beginning. And that's just Section 28. That's just the first issue on determining capacity. I've given you something in writing previously with a little bit more explanation, but I'm happy to go into much more detail. The other problem I see with it is in Section 72.
Sir, if you can please complete your remarks.
Yes, I will. Section 72 appears to require that the advance directive form can only be the one that was adopted 2 sessions ago. Well, those of us who practice in the area are still trying to figure out how to make that form work. It does not work. It has an entire section in the middle that causes confusion for physicians, and I hear that constantly from the doctors that I do estate planning for, and it just simply doesn't work. Now, we try to make things work. We're not here to complain that, something's got to change. We try to make things work, but we haven't figured out a way to make that work, and the last thing we would want is to be tied into a form of advance directive that we can see readily don't work. Thank you for your time and consideration. Oh, by the way, my name is spelled Tackes. I apologize, I didn't think of that earlier.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Donate, members of the committee. My name is John McCormick, John McCormick, Assistant Court Administrator at the Supreme Court, appearing this afternoon on behalf of the Guardianship Commission. I did provide a letter that has been posted on Nellis relaying the Commission's concerns regarding this measure. However, just briefly run through them. There are 5 major points of concern. The commission believes that the definition of capacity is overly restricted and may in fact harm vulnerable individuals. They believe that this measure could potentially undermine the authority of court-appointed guardians, through vague and subjective standards. The commission also feels that the expansion of default surrogate authority is problematic within the measure. They believe that this bill may, in fact, eliminate judicial oversight and could potentially create, in fact, due process problems in terms of the process followed for the protected or vulnerable individuals. And finally, the Guardianship Commission also has a concern that this could increase the amount of litigation and create a greater burden in this area. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else here in Carson City? Anyone in Las Vegas? Go ahead.
Yes. I was going to say good afternoon, but good evening. Senator Donate, members of that committee, William Voy, V as in Victor, O-Y, on behalf of the Southern Nevada Senior Law Program. I am the Director of Pro Bono Services. We must respectfully oppose AB 461. I want to first thank the sponsors for bringing forth this legislation. I understand the intent was to make it easier to create healthcare power of attorneys and other forms of substitute decision-making, but in practice, the legislation will have the opposite effect. This is a uniform act. There are some good provisions in this act which, if adopted separately, would not you would probably have no opposition. However, we currently have a very robust statutory framework. However, like most uniform acts that I've been involved with over the last 30 years, from an academic level, they look great. But from a boots on the ground practical application, they present challenges. One such challenge substantially affects our seniors that we advocate for at Southern Nevada Senior Law Program. Beginning last year, when I came on board, we started a significant initiative to maximize the execution of healthcare power of attorneys. We use workshops at our office. We have also mobile workshops. We go out in the community, Southern Nevada, and actually meet the folks there with pro bono attorneys and other staff members. We make sure those POAs and those advanced directives get lodged in the lockbox of the Secretary of State's office. This year, this calendar year, we're scheduled to do about 1,000. If this act goes into, is enacted, it will present substantial challenge to our ability to do so. We would hope to next calendar year double that number. However, with this, we'll be forced to have our folks come into our office one-on-one. Section 29, Section 42, subsections 5, 6, and 7, Section 28 will require us to fully document more so than we already do currently the file as it relates to capacity, for example. The environment in which we do the mobile workshops is not conducive to being able to talk the client through that process and gauge their capabilities at that time of execution sufficient to do so. So we'll have to basically go back to square one on getting folks to get these things in place. As I said before, we have a robust statutory framework. Some of the concerns are currently addressed in our current statutes.
Sir, if you can go ahead and complete your remarks, please.
And I'm just one more sentence. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm trying to cough. I'm sorry that it's been a long day. Healthcare providers to rely on. So trying to get a senior through the 2023 form that was adopted, we haven't been unsuccessful in doing so. The Southern Nevada Senior Law Program. This act will make it even more so. And seniors will be told and informed that, yes, this will be your agent that you're selecting. However, here are the reasons and the circumstances that could cause that not to happen. Thank you very much for your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else in Las Vegas in opposition? Let's go online, AVH.
Testify in opposition on AB 461, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Chair Donate, Vice Chair Taylor, members of the of the Senate Health and Human Services Committee. My name is Jacqueline Nguyen, NGUYEN, and I represent the Nevada State Medical Association. NSMA recognizes that advanced care planning is a vital aspect of ensuring patient treatment preferences and respected in the event that patients are unable to communicate their wishes. We also support the standardization of healthcare decision-making across states so that there is clarity for patients and physicians. However, NSMA does have concerns with some of the provisions of the underlying act itself. We believe that the standards for determining capacity should be aligned with best practices in psychiatric assessment to ensure accuracy and consistency in evaluating a patient's decision-making ability. We're also focused on Section 29 of the bill and want to emphasize the importance of prioritizing physician-led care, specifically ensuring that only appropriately trained or appropriately supervised professionals are authorized to rebut a presumption of capacity. Finally, NSMA needs some clarity regarding the conceptual amendment requiring due diligence in locating a designated agent. We want to ensure that this provision does not unintentionally impede physicians from delivering timely care in emergency situations. At this time, we are in opposition, but are committed to working with the bill sponsors to have the bill meet their intent while addressing our concerns. Thank you so much.
Caller with the last three digits, 160, please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Good evening, committee. My name is Jeff Luschek. I am an attorney in Las Vegas. I have practiced law in the state of Nevada for nearly 20 years, and for 16 of those years have practiced exclusively in probate trust, power of attorney, and guardianship law. And I'm coming out in opposition to AB 461. I'm extremely concerned with the implications that AB 461 may have on our current healthcare power of attorney statutes and our S-162A, and believe that it will unnecessarily increase litigation that will arise if it's enacted. My concerns regarding AB 461 include, but are not limited to, the following. First, while I agree that uniform acts can be helpful, Nevada already has a robust statutory scheme, particularly Titles 12 and 13, that may be unintentionally impacted by adopting uniform acts. Two, AB 461 also seeks to enact 80 or so different statutes, some of which are definitions, which appear to adopt the Uniform Healthcare Decisions Act in its totality. I have particular concerns with definitions set forth in Section 7, 10, 14, and 16, among others. Third, while people generally execute healthcare powers of attorneys to avoid litigation, I believe the following areas appear to create litigation, a litigation landmine, and will increase litigation. Specifically, I believe Sections 28, 29, and 30 will create litigation regarding issues pertaining to individuals' capacity to create a healthcare power of attorney. Sections 36 through 39, I believe, will create litigation regarding definitions and default surrogates that can act as an agent under a healthcare power of attorney. Sections 41 to 43, actions allowed by or not allowed by surrogates. Section 47, the good faith exceptions to civil or criminal liability, which was discussed previously. Section 48, while I generally agree that we do not want forged or falsified directives, the phrase inducement is extremely problematic for attorneys. And it appears that an attorney could potentially be fined $25,000 if they do not disclose a copy of a healthcare power of attorney, even if their client instructs them not to do so.
Sir, if you can go ahead and please complete your comments.
Yes, for those reasons and for others, I strongly oppose AB 461. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you're more than welcome to send those in writing if we don't have them already. AVH, we have time for one more online, please.
Hi, good evening, Chair Dunyate and members of the committee. Leah Cartwright, LEACARTWRIGHT, here tonight on behalf of the Nevada Psychiatric Association. We would echo the comments you've heard previously, especially those from the Nevada State Medical Association. I would also add that the Nevada Psychiatric Association worked diligently in 2017 on SB 50 to create psychiatric advance directives. Those conversations took place over many, many months during the legislative session, especially to figure out capacity, competency, and all of those terms that were discussed earlier. And we would ask that we retain our psychiatric advance directive portion of the law. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I have one more here in Carson City. Please begin.
Chair Jonathan Norman, NORMAN, Nevada Coalition of Legal Service Providers. I only jumped up because we had an attorney from Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada and one from Northern Nevada Legal Aid queued up on the phone, so I just want to make sure that the opposition is noted. They both submitted written comments for the committee to look at. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Norman. I have time for one more AVH.
If you'd like to testify in opposition, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 070, please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Once again, caller with the last 3 digits, 070, please press star 6 to unmute yourself.
My name is Deborah Bookout. I'm the directing attorney for the Guardianship Advocacy Project at Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada in Clark County. Guardianship Advocacy Project attorneys currently represent almost 3,000 adults in guardianship. We do have serious concerns with AB 461's definition of reasonably available, outlined in Section 21, as it pertains to an agent or guardian being willing and able to act in a timely manner. It is our opinion that this definition is vague and highly subjective, and as such, it provides too many opportunities for a hospital to simply ignore a patient's lawfully executed healthcare power of attorney. And I want to offer a real-life example of what happens when hospitals have this much discretion regarding a named agent under a healthcare directive. Recently, we had a case in which a client named her long-term partner to be her agent under her healthcare power of attorney. She went into the hospital with acute care needs, but then needed to be discharged to a setting that could assist with her lower level of care. The hospital was aware of an agent. However, they filed a petition for guardianship anyway, and when our attorney pointed out that she didn't need a guardian because she had a named agent and suggested they dismiss it, the attorney for the hospital responded that they would not be withdrawing the petition because they preferred to work with the public guardian to find placement. Because they were more knowledgeable and had more connections, and I quote them, more connections than, quote, the average individual. Had counsel not been appointed to represent her in the guardianship proceedings, our client may well have found herself in an unnecessary guardianship, despite having taken steps years prior to name an agent under a POA and avoid guardianship. If a hospital can simply ignore the healthcare directive of a patient when they are aware of a named agent who is willing and able to act, imagine what could happen if given only vague requirements to contact the agent, and when they don't, this bill would allow them to avoid all liability, even with negative outcomes. Further, in that situation I just described, under this bill, rather than filing a petition for guardianship, the hospital could then have appointed a default surrogate under Section 36, a person potentially unknown to the patient and possibly a hospital employee, by simply claiming that the named agent was, quote, unable to exercise his authority.
Ma'am, if you can please complete your remarks.
Based on the hospital's perception of his lack of knowledge as a, quote, average individual. The client's right to have her trusted named agent and make decisions for her would simply be ignored by the hospital with no liability. We should be encouraging more people to execute healthcare powers of attorney, which is a means to avoid guardianship, and we should be making it easier to do so, not harder. We should also be requiring hospitals to honor all lawfully executed powers of attorney under any circumstance and make all necessary measures to contact a named agent in a patient's healthcare power of attorney. This bill does none of those things, and for these reasons and others, we oppose AB 461. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's move on to neutral testimony. If you would like to testify in neutral on this bill, please come forward. I think I see someone down south. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman and the Commission. My name is Shauna Brennan. I am your ADSD advocacy rights attorney, and I am responsible for protecting the rights of individuals. I'm testifying in neutral because I do not lobby either side. I just want to make sure that this commission has been neutrally informed. I believe that many of the elements that have been discussed today are already in place, such as power of attorney and medical directive, of which you're aware. There are concerns that the Nevada stakeholders were not consulted. For example, the Guardianship Commission and Probate Bar have weighed in on this in writing, and also they are in opposition. So if you would please consider that. Most importantly, I'm concerned about the patient's rights and due process, that many of the aspects of this proposed bill overlook the rights of the patient and are possibly inconsistent, on my reading, inconsistent with Nevada provisions regarding least restrictive alternatives to guardianship, power of attorney, shared decision-making, and the guardianship orders. I would draw your attention to section 46.2, which I don't believe was amended. The last reading said that the healthcare decision made by these agents can prevail over the decision of the guardian. That's in direct conflict with our guardianship law, and I would ask you to take this and other provisions under consideration. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else in neutral on this bill? I don't see anyone here or in Las Vegas. AVH, is there anyone online?
To testify in neutral on AB 461, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue.
Good evening, Chair Giannotte and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Alvin Chan, spelled A-L-V-I-N, last name C-H-A-N. I originally intended to testify in support of AB 461, but was skipped over in the queue. I was wondering if I could do that now.
Unfortunately, sir, no, just because we've closed it, we have to give everyone an equal amount of time. But you can send in your comments in writing if that's okay.
Will do.
Thank you. AVH, is there anyone else?
Chair, there are no callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you so much. Assemblymember Ornlicker, do you have any closing remarks?
Thank you, David Ornlicker, for the record. I'll just say a few things. It's true only 2 states have enacted, as I said, this was only passed in 2023, but lots of states have adopted different provisions. I mentioned earlier that this is based on 40 years of experience. What's happened clinically, what kind of directives work, what don't. What have states done? So there are states that have the kind of default surrogate provision that's in this and that has had it for years and has worked well and hasn't created the kinds of problems that some of the opposition is worried about. It doesn't create new, somebody, I think it was Mr. Voy, said this creates new legal obligations. No, it clarifies existing legal obligations so lawyers and providers know what to do and don't have to go to court. This will reduce the need to go to court. And then there's some misreading. Section 72 does not require the use of the model form. It's just presented as an option. Other forms are perfectly fine. If it's important to say it more clearly, we'll say it more clearly. But this doesn't change what they do, and it doesn't change what the Senior Law Project's ability to go out and do their programs for seniors to fill out advance directives. This makes it no more burdensome. All it does is just make things more clear for everybody involved. So I'll continue to work with them and tighten things up, and let me know what you would like tightened up. And thank you for your consideration.
Thank you so much. At this time, I'll go ahead and close out this bill hearing, and we will move on to our last agenda item, which is public comment. And so if anyone would like to provide public comment, you may come forward. I don't see anyone here or in Las Vegas. AVH, is there anyone online?
To participate in public comment, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue. Chair, the public line is open and working. However, there are no callers at this time.
Thank you so much. That concludes the work of today. We'll see everyone on Thursday for our next round of bills and work sessions. Thank you so much. Meeting's concluded.